This meeting of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach is now in session. This is our formal meeting format. At this time, I ask that my colleagues and everyone in attendance please silence their electronic devices and phones. I ask my colleagues to acknowledge their presence on the voting board. Mrs. Holtz is absent this evening due to an illness. At this time, I'm asking everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Please rise as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now proceed with our awards and recognitions. Mrs. Hughes.
Welcome, families and guests. As a courtesy to all of our honorees, we kindly ask that you remain until the conclusion of all recognitions. We shouldn't take long, and we know that you'll be impressed. Our first recognition is for rising seniors who have demonstrated exceptional academic achievement and have been named Class of 2020 Brickell Scholars. Let's meet them. From Bayside High School, we have Megan Goodmurphy and Kira Myers. From Cox High School, we have Jordan Parker Ash and Alexandra Perez. From First Colonial High School, we have Hunter Baraki and Victoria Murdoch. From Green Run High School, we have Key Buckhalter and Manuela Bushamani. From Green Run Collegiate, we have Mika Agayo. From Kellam High School, we have Emerson Boone and Reed Williams. From Kempsville High School, we have Carson Blythe and Michaela Harvey. From Lansdowne High School, we have Zach Deal and Jessica Gilly. From Ocean Lakes High School, we have Ryoma Harris and Noah Siraj. From Princess Anne High School, we have Sama Kuba and Rowan Rathi. From Salem High School, we have Ella Hayes and Danielle Miller. And from Tallwood High School, we have Alden Barson and Rachel McGraw. The E.E. Brickell Scholarship Program is sponsored by the Virginia Beach Rotary Club and named for longtime former superintendent, Dr. Edward E. Brickell. During their senior year, these students will participate in various seminars on a range of current issues. At the conclusion of their senior year, one student from this impressive group is awarded the Brickell Scholarship, which for the past few years has been $6,000. Who will that honoree be from this impressive group? Tune in next year. And congratulations, Class of 2020 Brickell Scholars.
You just met the newest class of Brickell Scholars. Let's now meet this year's $6,000 Brickell Scholarship recipient. Congratulations to Keno Rich from Ocean Lakes High School. Keno's long list of accomplishments include President of his school National Honor Society, recipient of Vanderbilt University Cornelius Vanderbilt Scholarship, finalist for UVA's Jefferson Scholarship Award, first place in computer science and behavior science competition at the Tidewater Science and Engineering Fair, second place in computer science at the Virginia State Science and Engineering Fair, and the list goes on. He also tutors during one lunch and all the varsity tennis team, serve as a leadership workshop advisor, and is enrolled in the school math and science academy. But that's not all. He is also an active volunteer in Adopt a Park, Beach Bags, Relay for Life, and Special Olympics. This fall, he will attend Vanderbilt University, where he plans to double major in biochemistry or chemical biology and economics. Wow. His goal is to become either a medical or surgical oncologist. Please join me in congratulating 2019 Brickell Scholarship Award recipient. Give him a hand.
Good evening, everybody. It's now on to our Future Teacher Awards, something we look forward to every spring. Our next honorees are the 2019 Virginia Beach City Public Schools Future Teacher Award recipients. Let's meet them. From Bayside High School, Rachel Bacon Jenkins. If we could hold our applause till after each school, that would be great. Abigail Gregory, still with Bayside. Caitlin McDonald. And finally, Luke Rambo. Okay. From Cox High School, Abigail Farrow, Chloe Jones, and Taylor Schooler. First Colonial High School, Cynthia Dunker and Kelly Jajewski. Green Run High School, Alicia Ortiz Claudio, Ramiro Lynn Suelo, and Qui Tron Castro. From Kellam High School, Alina Billington, Abigail Bruce, Samantha Carlton, Maya Dickerson, and Mary Robinson. From Kempsville High School, Reagan Keel and Claire Lundberg. Ocean Lakes High School, Natalie Kazmarek and Blake Smith. From Princess Anne High School, Isabella Cabacan Picard, Mackenzie Crawford, Sarah Culver, Julia Hopper, Lindsay West, and Megan White. Quite a group. From Tallwood High School, Keegan Hinson and Abigail Martin. And finally, from the Tech Center, Tiffany Gallegos and Christina Hentz.
All right, Keegan. Congratulations.
The school division's Future Teacher Awards were instituted in 2008 to honor and reward outstanding students who have indicated their intent to pursue teaching as a career. Honorees are selected from amongst Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow or early childhood education students. And here's the best part. Since the awards are administered by the division's Human Resources Department, tonight's honorees will receive a provisional contract to become a teacher in one of our schools upon completion of a degree in an approved teacher education program. We hope the best for all of you and hope to see many of you back in 4 years. Congratulations.
Okay, and for our final recognition, we are proud to recognize our 2020 Citywide Teacher of the Year, Princess Anne High School Spanish teacher Rachel Thompson. After graduating summa cum laude from St. Louis University in Madrid, Spain, with a bachelor's degree in Spanish philology and English literature, Thompson returned to the United States without knowing what her future held. That is, until a former teacher asked her to substitute teach. Those kids were not just students, they were my students, she vividly recalls thinking at the end of that first year. She was immediately hooked on teaching. Now, after 15 years of teaching, all with Virginia Beach City Public Schools, she says that she is still learning, still improving, and still working every day to inspire students. Her colleagues have honored her with multiple awards, including the Rookie Foreign Language Teacher of the Year in 2006, and as Princess Anne High School's Distinguished Educator in 2009, 2010, and 2018. According to her principal, Mrs. Thompson embodies all of the characteristics that make an exceptional educator. She is passionate about teaching, eager to stay abreast of current pedagogy, and exemplifies a growth mindset. Her students wholeheartedly agree. When asked to describe her, one of them very eloquently said that Mrs. Thompson is someone who is the light in the lives of her students. Please join me in congratulating our 2020 Citywide Teacher of the Year. That concludes our recognitions for this evening. I couldn't see volume on there at all.
Oh.
Like I touched the right buttons, but it didn't show.
Okay. I just want to make sure that Raven doesn't FaceTime me.
It is so cold. Just turn it off.
I don't want to turn it off. I want to be able to use it, but, oh, sorry. Dr. Spence, we look forward to hearing the superintendent's report.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. As you know, the recent Something in the Water Festival turned out to be a huge success for Virginia Beach, and in particular for our school division, since Pharrell Williams is a graduate of Princess Anne High School, and we partnered with him and the city on so many different aspects of the event. The week leading up to the festival epitomized our school division's core value of doing great work together, something which was clearly evident as our music instructors and students delivered a fantastic Battle of the Bands performance, as we celebrated the garden expansion at SeaTac, and as our bus drivers safely and without incident transported attendees to and from the venue. We thought we'd keep the good vibes going by taking a quick look back at that involvement.
So the garden benefits the children in promoting kindness and joy, and especially community by bringing in service to give back, as the Something in the Water Festival promoted. So we really wanted to promote empathy for others, nurturing living things. When we were back showing Pharrell the sculpture and all those good things, Pharrell said to the boys he was so impressed with them, with all the courage that they have to give back to the community.
Because it shows us that a community can come together to make something great and beautiful, just like this. It's just heartwarming because it's for the school, but it's also for the community. What they do.
Appears we are having some technical difficulties, which is okay. We will pause there with a note that this was a terrific event and that everyone's actions in the video that you've been able to see do perfectly illustrate a community coming together. I would at least like to take a moment to thank everyone, in particular our employees, our students, our business partners, our community members, and our alumni who had a part in making all of that happen. Somebody mentioned there's already talk about Something in the Water too, so stay tuned for more about our involvement with this great event and our great alumni. Clearly, this was a celebration of the power of many working as one, which is something that we remained focused on as a key part of our strategic goals. Madam Chairwoman, we will find a time to share that report with the board, and it will be on our Compass Keepers page. Thank you so much, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. Before we begin the next item on the agenda, I would like to take this time to give a statement to the public in regards to the Rose Hall appointment for the school board seat. The events in recent weeks regarding the process used by the school board to consider applicants for the District 3 Rose Hall vacancy on the school board has caused considerable media attention and unnecessarily detracted from the important work that the school division staff and students have been undertaking regarding division-wide testing and end-of-year activities. It is regrettable that it took these events to bring to light the deficiencies in the procedures that the school board used to consider applicants for the school board vacancies. The school board can and will do better. Accordingly, I will be requesting that the school board and school administration work to develop a procedure for considering appointments to school board vacancies that will address more transparency in the application and interview procedures, appropriate applicant vetting procedures, more extensive requests for applicant information, and better definition of the roles of the school board and the school administration in the application and appointment process. Also this evening, before we begin with public speakers, I'd like to remind everyone about our bylaw 1-48. And it states, expressive activities including but not limited to petitioning, picketing, displaying signs or posters, solicitation, demonstrating pamphlet distribution, and conducting polls shall not be permitted in the school board chambers, school board conference room, the waiting areas and corridors adjacent to the school board chambers and school board conference room, the school administration building, or in any school building while a school board meeting is in progress. No person shall use or allow to sound any device in a manner that disrupts the conduct of business. With that being said, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on agenda items this evening?
Yes, ma'am, we do, and we have several, so we're going to run through them as quickly as we can, giving them all each their due 4-minute time. I'll be calling the names 3 at a time, which also includes a number. I ask that you please line up and be prepared to take the podium after the previous speaker. We're going to start first with number 104, Suzanne Saltesiak, then Jana Saltesiak, then Mary Dye.
I just want to say also that usually we stop our speakers at 7:30, but this evening, due to the fact that we have so many speakers and due to the fact that we have a vote pending on our action later this evening, we are going to allow speakers to continue until everyone has had a chance.
I've spoken to you all a few times, but I have never really gotten to tell you guys why I became a part of this recess movement. We moved here about 2 years ago, and my then 9-year-old son, Logan, started going to elementary school here. He's the typical good kid. He's probably one of the only kids in this district that actually looks forward to taking his SOL today. You see, he thinks of them as a game, and he wants to beat his high score from last year. He learns chess during indoor recess in Henrico. He's a rated chess player. He travels to other states to play baseball, and he gets almost all APs in behavior and citizenship. There's a reason that I'm telling you this. When I've talked with some school administrators in the past, I've been asked how much we really think kids know about the time they get at recess. But they don't really know my kid. One of my friends actually laughed when I told them that I'd been asked that. They'd been on the phone with me twice where Logan had actually walked up to me and asked, Mom, we need to leave for baseball in about 15 minutes. Are you going to be ready in time? About a month after starting school here, my son mentioned that he didn't get recess. I was shocked, sent an email to the principal, and I got a response from the PE teacher that it was called choice time and happened during PE. I explained that to Logan. No big deal. Then last January, Logan came home in tears. He sobbed that he hated school and didn't want to go back. He told me the new lunch monitor made them be on silent lunch the whole time and he didn't get recess and that he was just tired and couldn't deal with being there anymore. He told me that because it was cold, they hadn't gotten choice time in a while, so being me, I sent another email and told Logan that, we'll start tracking the time. During the next 2 weeks, my son received choice time fewer than 2 times for about 10 minutes each. During a few of the earlier days, he was on silent lunch for 25 out of the 30 lunch minutes. As time went on, those silent lunch periods stopped, possibly because of my email. I don't know. I talked to kids on our block. A 5th grader told me they didn't have recess, but had just started a new thing that week where if they finished their PE lesson in time, they could have time to talk at the end. And a 3rd grader told me that recess was only for kindergarten and 1st graders. I got an email from the PE teacher sharing they didn't go outside when the weather was below 45. With the time frame, amount of kids, it made indoor choice time difficult, and so he offered kids choices to play or talk. I figured it was systemic, and I didn't want to get him in trouble since my son really liked him, so I let it go since the silent lunch was getting better and it was starting to get warm. But I kept talking to people and learning more about it being a problem around the district. It got better at the beginning of this year, but then November and colder weather hit. And that's when I started hearing from parents around the district that there was no recess, or it was recess but very limited. So here we are again in warmer months. Administrators and teachers have definitely become more aware. Things are better, and the committee has them set to be even better in the fall, hopefully. But I'm afraid that if more doesn't change, I will be right back here next year when the weather turns cold again. I hope through this process I've earned some trust from you and that you all know that I make every attempt to learn about what I am speaking to you about. I have communicated with many of your constituents about these issues, and I am telling you that cold weather and indoor recess are a big issue in your schools. And I am as tired of talking to you about recess as you probably are of hearing me talk about it. So I am begging you to please add to the school board regulation 5-58.1 to require each elementary school to have a written plan for indoor recess practice and use. I understand the benefits of site-based decision, and I think we should have room for that determination. But it needs to be written, accessible to parents and staff, and it needs to include the process about when indoor recess happens, where it happens, and what will be included. I submit to you a VDOE Superintendent Memo number 114-17 that shared a model wellness policy that was developed by the USDA, and this policy does include a time requirement and indoor recess. So this is in your control, and I implore you to change this. And one last thing, I just wanted to show you a picture that we took of my son last week. This was one we actually took to celebrate. The first
Sorry,
time he
your
got to
time
play
is
on the
up.
school playground.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jana Saltesiak, Mary Dye, Morgan Pierce.
Hello, my name is Jana Saltesiak, and I'm a 7th grader at Princess Anne Middle School, but I didn't go to elementary school in Virginia Beach. I'm not sure I would have been the same if I had. I'm very weird and I'm proud of it. I used to tell my mom that I loved school. It was the kids I wasn't so sure about. I had several really good friends, but they weren't always in my class. One year I went for the entire year eating lunch by myself because I didn't have any friends in my class. When I could, I moved my desk to be next to the teacher so that they would hear if anyone was mean to me. Recess was a time that I could be with my friends. We would pretend that we were wolves in a pack or that we were explorers looking for signs of a mythical creature that lived there. One day we found a butterfly that was dying, and we created a bed of flowers and sang to it to make its last time on Earth happy. I loved almost all subjects, and recess was one where I could be me. But gym was my least favorite. You see, I'm smart, but I'm not so good at sports stuff. When we had our PE class, that was when the other kids would not want me on their teams, or get frustrated with me for not being able to keep up, or saying that I made a team lose. The teachers tried and helped, and sometimes kids were nice, but I just hated PE. My brother Logan went to school there in Richmond and then moved here, and he's had both types of recess. He's told me that he loves PE and what his PE is like, and what recess is like there. He loves PE and all the athletic ability that I didn't, but even he gets frustrated with it. His recess is right after his PE class, and he says that a lot of the time the PE teacher gives them a choice of doing the PE lesson or talking on the side as their choice time. Sometimes they set up stations, but they're all PE type stuff and games. There's no chance to do the things that I did at recess, and he hasn't been allowed on any of the playgrounds at his school until a week ago. Like I said, I love school. I love learning and I do pretty well in it, but I don't know if I had recess that was like my brother's is now. It's not easy to find weird kids like to play with, and recess was how I was able to find them in my school. I also wanted to say something about the empty school board seat. My parents showed me the posts about the original person chosen, and they asked me to share what I thought. I noticed that I didn't have the same understanding of history that I learned in school, and in social studies we learned this year that the Confederate flag image wasn't actually the correct real Confederate flag, and it scared me that kind of scared me that he put up a picture of a guy who shot up a lot of people because he didn't like the color of their skin. I don't know who he is as a person, and he may actually be pretty nice, but I was glad when I found out he wasn't going to be making decisions about what me and my friends do in school. I look around the school board and see a lot of people that look like me. But when I look around my school, I see a lot of more people who don't look like me. I've learned in social studies that people who look like me have been the ones who are in charge most of the time, like they seem to be here. We've done some good things, but we've also done a lot of not so good things because we didn't understand or we are afraid of people who didn't look like us. We've treated people like slaves, made them move off their land and into reservations. We've made them go to internment camps and separate but equal schools. People who look like me have always thought that they could speak for us all, but we really haven't done a very good job. My mom taught me that, well, I should always stand up against hate, but I cannot speak up for people who look different than me. I could never know what it's like to be a black kid or a Filipino kid or a biracial kid in our schools. I wanted to come in here and tell you that you can't either, and I was really sad that you didn't try to make the school board look more like our schools do when you had a chance. Thank you.
Mary Dye, Morgan Pierce, Ace Cartier, number 106, 107, 108.
That's
hard to follow. My name is Mary Di, and I am here with my daughter because I've always tried to teach her that when we really care about something, we come and we talk to the people in charge. So you are our principals of the principals, as she said on our way here. And I noticed in my work every day, I'm an eating disorders dietitian. I sit in the rooms with kids all day long, hearing about their struggles in self-esteem and body image. And I also, on the other hand, am in a lot of meetings about wellness policy and so forth. So I feel like I straddle those two worlds, and I think that the speaker before me spoke so well to what happens when our kids are asked to move their bodies in very structured, regimented play versus what gets to happen when they're there for free play. So yes, I'm here for recess. So like she said, you know, some kids don't feel like they're the one picked for the team. They don't feel confident at throwing the basketball, and they will move their bodies when given the opportunity, or they'll take time to decompress because their body knows when that is what's needed. And what I see with our kids all around the city is they're really not getting that decompression time, and it's like an explosion at the end of the day. Unfortunately, I see it in forms of self-harm that look in various ways, and it troubles me greatly. And then when I talk to my daughter about how was your day, or if we're having a maybe rougher after-school time, and I ask, hey, did you get recess? Did you have time taken away? What happened? I see a correlation. So that concerns me as well. Sometimes when recess is being taken away to address certain behaviors of students, when we know from the science that it only makes those behaviors worse because they're not getting to decompress. So that is what I'm here to talk to you all about, and to urge you to listen to my peers on recess policy. So thank you.
Next, I have Morgan Pierce, 107. 108 is Ace Cartier. 109 is Beth Cartier.
Morgan Pierce is not present. Thank you. She had a child care issue.
Thank you. Ace Cartier, 108. Beth Cartier, 109. Cooper O'Calvin, 110. (111) is Zoe O'Calvin. 112 is Chona O'Calvin.
Shall I speak first? So we first came in, I think it was in February, and I'm busy like all mums, and I heard that a movement towards recess was going on, and I thought that was a good idea, but I wasn't prompted to come in until Ace got in the car one day and just by himself complained. And this is essentially the nature of the complaint. So.
My name is Ace Cartier. I'm 7 years old, and in 2nd grade I go to ODS Brickell Academy. I'm asking you to consider giving us more time for recess. We have 2 recess times during the day when we can play: PE recess and snack with recess. In PE recess, most of the time we don't get to play our own games. During snack with recess, we aren't allowed to play tag games where we run and then touch each other. I don't know why we're not allowed to run and touch each other, but last month this changed to include a lot of other games like infection and freeze tag. We have to ask permission to get a drink of water and go to the bathroom. When the weather is cold or rainy, we don't get to go outside. We are inside and we still have to listen to the teacher. There isn't a time that we can play that isn't ruled.
So just for a bit of context, like another speaker, Ace actually really likes learning. He's got a really long attention span and can often play for hours and hours on a particular thing. So the fact that he wanted a break in itself was surprising to me. And I thought of my other child who has less of an attention span. And I wondered how he was going to cope in a system that didn't give enough of a break for even this child. At the time when he first complained about it, he also mentioned that other kids in his class were getting in trouble for talking, but he I think we talked about the fact, he thinks I said it, I think he said it, that maybe they were talking because they didn't get any break that day. So his time is, and my time have sort of merged. I'm going to say what I prepared.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, I also am a speaker.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So I'm Dr. Beth Cartier. I'm an assistant professor at the Eastern Virginia Medical School. I look at storytelling and the way that different patterns of stories relate to cognition. I'm really interested in the kind of reasoning needed to imagine new stories like scientific discoveries or creative artworks. And as a parent, I care that my kids are making the ability to create new knowledge when something comes up that I haven't predicted. And so I care about the same thing that ACE cares about, and that's unstructured play. Free playtime at school is different from playdates or family or even camp. It's a long-term connection with peers who know you and judge you or are indifferent to you and don't have to be entertained by you. It's an opportunity to learn how people really are as a group and to exist with them. It lets kids be part of the in the wild community that they're going to have to navigate as adults. At first, honestly, I was a bit relieved to hear about the predictability that there was so little unstructured playtime. But it's the part of me that feels relieved when I put on the TV in order to make dinner. You can't do it all the time because this is the time they have, the period of time where they get the training wheels to spend time learning to deal with each other. And if you don't have that, I don't even know what happens if you don't have that. Because I grew up in Australia where you have an hour and a half of recess every day. And I tell you that it was a challenge for me personally. I'm on the spectrum. But I learned the ebb and flow of human tides. Social structures are built and destroyed and come and go in those periods of time. And you really need to learn that stuff to understand what's going on in the world right now. So in conclusion, I want my kids to be able to make their own stories about what just happened. The same skill is needed for them to become artists or leaders. These people that we admire in the community, they are the storytellers for their tribe. And if someone's always giving you their story and making you play their way, then you don't get to really excel with those skills. And I think it would be a wise thing to invest the energy and the effort and the time to let the kids of Virginia Beach learn those skills too. Thank you.
Next, we have Cooper O'Galvin, 110, Zoe O'Galvin, 111, and Chona O'Galvin, 112. I ask that you please hold your applause so we can get as many people in as we possibly can.
My name is Cooper O'Galvin. I'm a 4th grader at Newcastle Elementary School. I would like to ask the school board for more recess at my school because 10 minutes after PE is not long enough to play. Sometimes my PE teacher tells us that we owe 5 or 10 minutes of our recess to him if some kids in my class were bad or didn't follow instructions. Then we get no recess at all. I don't think that it is fair to get recess taken away when one person misbehaves. I need more than 10 minutes after PE to get my energy out. Thank you.
Next, we have Zoe O'Galvin, Chona O'Galvin, then Tracy Olson.
My name is Zoe O'Galvin. I am 2nd grade at Newcastle Elementary School. I would like to ask the school board for more recess at my school because I need time to be active during the day. I got a Fitbit for my birthday recently, and I found out that I only get 3,000 steps when I'm at school. My goal is to get 10,000 steps every day because I like to be active. I also like to play on the playground, but we only get to go out there on Tuesdays when it's not raining. One time I only got 1.5 minutes of recess, so we barely got to play. I wish we could play out there more. Recess is my favorite part of the day. Thank you.
Next, we have Chona O'Galvin, Tracy Olson, and number 114, Ronna Marsh.
Good evening. My name is Chona O'Galvin. Thank you for formally putting recess on the agenda this evening. I'm not sure what else I can say at this juncture that you haven't already heard about the benefits of more recess, so I hope to appeal to you about making this policy. The current Student and Staff Wellness Regulation 5-58.1 stays fairly ambiguous to provide schools autonomy, which is understandable. However, when it comes to consistently applying said regulations, our children are suffering. It's against policy to take recess away as punishment, but it still happens. For my child to only get 3,000 steps at school is pretty pitiful. I get 3,000 steps just running around my house in the morning getting ready for the day. So a formal recess policy will advocate cultivating students who are focused and ready to learn because they have had adequate time to release energy and recharge their developing brains. We support the school board's mission to developing the whole child and being ahead of the curve, but providing our students with more recess is vital to this mission because recess is still learning. Thank you so much for your time.
Next, I have Tracy Olson, Ronna Marsh, Margie Jones, number 115.
Good evening again. Tracy Olson. I'm speaking tonight in the hope that you can affect change for the overall well-being of our elementary children in the area of recess. Rethinking how we look at it is critical to giving our students the best that BBCPS has to offer physically, mentally, and academically. You've no doubt over the last 6 months learned about, heard about, and probably done some of your own research on the immense benefits that recess affords children. We are asking tonight that a regulation be put in place or an updated 5-58.1 be written that gives kindergarten students 40 minutes daily and 1st through 5th grade students a minimum of 30 minutes. We are also requesting that a regulation be put in place that gives teachers an additional 10 minutes. This reorganization of the school day is not a loss of instructional time, but rather a necessary and integral part of their education. One of the most important features of this recess time, however, is the unstructured nature. Teachers all over are complaining and reporting that increased aggressive behaviors, decreased ability to regulate their emotions like anger and frustration, as well as a large decrease in the ability to stay focused throughout the day in the classroom. These are all related to the lack of free play. Angela Hanscom, who is a pediatric occupational therapist and founder of a place called Timbernook, which is a program that fosters creativity and independent play outdoors, has written extensively on this subject. And we heard from Australia, they get an hour and a half of recess every day. It just blows my mind. Anyway, this Angela writes that schools have too many restrictions on physical education and recess, and it's making it harder for the kids to move literally. She talks about the vestibular system, and that controls your balance, and how neglecting it by restricting movement, by only doing jump rope, only giving hula hoop, only playing this, it weakens it over time. The more we control every activity they do, get down, you're going to get hurt, stop spinning, you're going to get dizzy, it is doing more damage. The author of Spark, Dr. Rady, compares the brain, or says the brain is a muscle that is shriveling with inactivity. If we don't exercise this muscle, we are basically making it atrophy. If it's stimulated with play, the neurons in the brain are connecting to one another through these leaves that act like tree-like branches, and then the exercise causes those branches to grow and then have new buds, and then we put them in the classroom and they can learn better. Keeping our children in an upright position for a majority of the day, like we're doing right now, it doesn't stimulate or challenge them. Then we ask ourselves, well, gosh, they're just so fidgety. Why are they fidgety? Why are they so emotional? Why can't they solve problems? And then they refuse to do their work. If we take a look at the Finns, I bring up the Finns only because out of the top 10 public school education ranking in the world, they're number 4. We're not even on the list. Okay, they give their students 2 to 3 hours every day. Let's let that sink in. We're asking for 40 to 50 minutes. They give 2 to 3 hours every day. It's that important. Why are they so successful? Well, for one, there's no standardized testing at all. No citywide assessments, no SOLs, 2 to 3 hours outside every day. And I really feel like that's the most important thing. We're asking for 40 to 50 minutes. It's crucial. It's necessary. We want better desk scores. We want better test scores, recess. Better mental health, recess. Better physical health, recess. Better behavior, recess. Better academics, recess. All of these roads are leading to recess. Rethink, reorganize, recess. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronna Marsh, Margie Jones, Kendra Krupa, and 116.
School board members, I'm here again because I'm trying to get more transparency, and it's disappointing to hear the chair tonight say that we can't hold up our visuals that we create because there's visuals all around the room and people are visual learners. It would seem that if I take the time to make a visual and come to speak to you, I should be able to use my visual.
Excuse me, but the visual is against our bylaws.
Madam
I've
Chair,
read-
she's allowed to use a chart during her display. She just
Thank
can't
you.
do it in the back of the room.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
very much.
And could I have an extra
for
10 seconds or
clarification.
15 seconds for what was just taken away? I'm here to speak on behalf of having Seiko Varner on this school board. You have 9 women on this school board, and I think we could certainly use a male on this school board. The most important and impressive thing to me about Seiko Varner, other than he is compassionate and well thought of in the community, is he has lived in his home for 12 years. 12 years he's lived in Rose Hall. He's not bringing us affidavits or something to try to prove that he's lived here or recently moved here. He's lived here 12 years. 2008 was a long time ago. So I think that really speaks really well for him that he would represent us, Ms. Felton, and he would really be an asset to the community. Additionally, he has a degree and has been a teacher. He has taught special ed. He has also volunteered at the Virginia Beach Public Schools. And I really feel that he has the compassion and understanding. When I reach out and speak to him, Ms. Anderson, he responds to me. He calls me back or he emails me. I feel that it's important that all members of the school board should be talking to us because transparency is what we feel as citizens has been lost. That we don't have that transparency and we don't know what's going on. And we hope that you do improve. It would be helpful if you would, Ms. Meldick, make sure that all these budget meetings and all these meetings about appointing people to the school board are open and transparent. We want them. And I think appointing Seiko to the board because he is a long-term Rose Hall resident and he is devoted to students would be an excellent step in rebuilding the trust and making me feel more confident that the school board is representing me and the $906 million that you're going to spend would have someone that I could also ask about what's going on. So I hope you will really consider him and that I hope you will let other people bring up their charts and graphs and use them at the meetings because I did read them in your policies and it's part of your communications to let people have these used during their presentation. So again, I just encourage you to vote for Seiko. If anyone hasn't spoken to him directly, I think he is an excellent person to speak to about our community. He's done a lot of things in the Virginia Beach Public Schools. He's been volunteering for 4 years, and he's volunteered for summer school. So I think he is a good person, and we should have him on our school board. Thank you. And
Margie Jones, Kendra Krupa, Sandra Schinnebarger, number 117.
Hi, my name is Margie Jones. I'm here to talk about recess. I have 2 kindergartners in the Virginia Beach school system. And when we talk about their I also have sticky notes because I have 2 kindergartners. When we talk about their day at supper time, they talk about recess. They tell us who chased whom. You know, one of them tells me that she stomped on top of some equipment structure that Michael was underneath. And, you know, they talk about their play. They talk about their friends. They talk about what was fair and what was not fair. And like so many people have said here tonight, this is where they're learning to navigate the world and all these relationships. The other day we were talking about recess, and one of them mentioned to me that students can lose recess as punishment for disruptive behavior. And I was pretty lukewarm on the whole recess thing as a kindergarten parent. I mean, I was aware that this conversation was going on, but it didn't really affect me directly until I heard that the teacher will either take away half of the kids' recess or their entire recess. And these are 5- and 6-year-olds. And as my 6-year-old said to me, she said, and that's not okay because if you don't have recess, you can't get your energy out and you still have all that energy in you. And how right she is. So the message that I want to bring to y'all tonight is
that my understanding is your policy already prohibits the removal of recess as a negative consequence. So when you do update your policy, as I'm sure you're going to, I really hope that you go the extra mile and you make this effort to actually create a culture change in the community of educators here. So this is not just something that's written on paper. It's something that is actually, you go into the schools, you change this on the level with each individual teacher so that my children haven't lost recess because they save all of their bad behavior for home. But I don't want my sweet children coming home and, I mean, they really, they feel terrible. And it's, in my opinion, the children who are acting out the most, the ones who are being the most disruptive during instructional time, are the ones that need recess the most. And so I would ask y'all to please change the culture so that recess is actually treated as a right rather than a privilege. Thank you.
Next, I have Kendra Krupa, Sandra Schinnebarger, Holly Edwards, number 118.
Good evening. My name is Kendra Krupa. I am a mother of 2 young children. I work as a substitute teacher in Virginia Beach Public Schools and in my younger daughter's preschool. I know the importance firsthand of recess, and I also see it taken away or its importance minimized all too frequently. It is my opinion that our children's mental health is at risk if they don't have enough recess time. We all need breaks. Balance is so important and helps our children learn. As a substitute teacher in Virginia Beach Public Schools, I've witnessed recess not being given because of school events such as an assembly or time that just slipped away. This should only happen as the exception and not the norm. My 3rd grade daughter's least favorite day of the week is Tuesday because recess is at the end of the day. How is this a break for our children when it's just before school dismissal? I've been told that some children were crying when they went to take bathroom breaks during SOLs last week. My daughter's recess was canceled after Tuesday's SOL because one child ruined it for the whole class by talking in the hallway. Our children are under great stress at school and they need a break. How is this fair, and how are actions such as these looking out for our children's total well-being? Thank you for your time and consideration. Please make the school administration's proposal a school board regulation and formal policy. I have a few statements from a few parents who couldn't be here today, and I'll read them as time allows. The first one is from Danielle Nixon, a mother of a rising kindergartner. She sent this quote by Penelope Leach. For a small child, there is no division between playing and learning, between the things he or she does just for fun and things that are educational. The child learns while living, and any part of living that is enjoyable is also play. The next statement is from Heather Like. She has a son in kindergarten at Centerville Elementary. My name is Heather Like, and my son is 6 and attends a half-day kindergarten program at Centerville. He started late in the year and previously attended a private school. We have found the teachers and principal to be wonderful. What concerns me is that my son has shared that he still doesn't have any friends. He still does not know any of his classmates' names. He feels bad about himself because he is reminded constantly to be quiet. He shares that during center time, his teacher is working with other students and they are not allowed to talk. During the rest of the day, they are working and cannot talk. What can I tell him when he says, "How am I supposed to make any friends if I can't talk to anyone?" 5 and 6-year-olds need some unstructured time in their day to interact with each other. I understand there is a lot of work to be done, but when we look at science and what provides the best outcomes for children, it is not drill instruction. 5 and 6-year-olds still need time to play and socialize. My last statement is from Arti Kumar Jain. She is also a parent of an upcoming kindergartner and feels very strongly that recess time needs to be increased. She is sorry she cannot physically be here to share this in person. As a former elementary teacher, I know the need for children to have free play and have time to be able to develop and maintain physical stamina and develop and maintain social skills. Also, it contributes to mindfulness and stress reduction. I have found that quality time is being unstructured to allow for teachers and students to bond. Thank you.
Next, I have Sandra Schinnebarger, Holly Edwards, and then Tom Shank, number 119.
Good evening, Dr. Spence, Chairwoman Anderson, and Virginia Beach School Board members. I would like to first sincerely thank Mrs. Carolyn Weems and Vicki Manning for listening to our group, for hearing us, and for openly supporting our recess group since the first time we spoke nearly 6 months ago in December. Our group spoke at every single one of these wonderful school board meetings since then. When Laura Hughes was sworn in, we immediately gained her support and Mrs. Rise. Thank you both, as we appreciate the added encouragement. Thank you, Dr. Spence, for arranging the Recess Review Committee that served to share research about the academic benefits of recess with more of the VBCPS community. I want to clarify that our group is expecting a formal citywide policy adjustment and not just an unenforceable guideline. We are expecting encouragement from admin towards teachers as far as going outdoors in cooler temperatures. And that's pretty much all I had to say. And also, I wanted to add, speaking for myself and my family, the Dombeys and the Schinnebargers would prefer Mr. Seiko Varner as the interim school board member. Are we allowed to have him stand up? Okay, no, that was it. I was going to shorten the meeting a little bit and be finished with my comments. So, thank you.
Next, I have Holly Edwards, Tom Shank, Jessica Owens is number 120.
Hi, my name is Holly Edwards, and I'm here representing a grassroots community of nearly 2,000 people in Virginia Beach named Together We Will. And most of them are members and residents of Virginia Beach. But more importantly, today, I'm here as Grace's mom. Grace is a kindergartner with Virginia Beach Public Schools, and I'm here to talk about recess, obviously by my shirt. However, I would be remiss if I did not briefly take the opportunity to address the recent school board appointment. I'm disappointed in the vetting process for sure to allow Mr. Mullins to be appointed, but I'm even more frustrated that he was ever chosen in the first place. I've been told that all 3 candidates were well qualified for this position. I understand that diversity may come in all forms. However, looking around the room, it is very easy to see where this school board is lacking. The board had an opportunity to appoint a person of color to represent our students, and we saw all of the students that are coming through here that clearly represent our community. And you chose not to. I feel as though you failed the students of color in this regard. Further, this entire process has taken place behind closed doors. Democracy dies in the dark. I hope that you take the opportunity to shed light on this process and to move forward in a more transparent way. The other reason that I'm here today is to talk about recess. So when we toured Grace's school last year, she was so excited to start school for 2 reasons. The first was that every school had their own library where she could take home a book every week. And the second was the awesome playgrounds. However, it was not long before we realized that those playgrounds that are funded by our taxpayer dollars are not being used. I have been working behind the scenes with students, moms and dads all over the district and with the school appointed committee for the last several months. I see several areas in which the committee recommendations that are being presented appear to be lacking. I have learned that recess time within Virginia Beach schools is not equal. What I hope the board will consider is ensuring that this is no longer the case. Any new policies, regulations, and guidelines should include some flexible time for teachers in addition to the planned recess. Teachers know their students best, and they know when they need a break. It should include a district-wide temperature threshold for outdoor play and inclement weather plan to ensure that children can be outdoors as much as possible. There should be a plan for indoor recess to ensure that when students cannot be outside, that they still have the opportunity for unstructured and free play. Finally, I would expect that any changes that address the use of the playgrounds to ensure that no more children have to sit in their classrooms and look out the window at a beautiful playground that they will never play on. I'm optimistic that all children within Virginia Beach schools, regardless of where they attend, will have an equal opportunity for outdoor recess, playground use, and unstructured free play. Thank you.
Next, I have Tom Shank, Jessica Owens, then Brian Owens is 121.
Hi, my name's Tom Shank. Many studies have shown the short-term benefits of recess on student performance. I'd like to give you some of the scientific reasons why increasing recess is a critical investment in the long-term development of our student population. I'm a former elementary school teacher of 22 years with Portsmouth Public Schools. I became obsessed with new brain research and began trying many brain-friendly techniques at my school. As a result, I was the 2011 Portsmouth Teacher of the Year and then the 2012 Virginia Teacher of the Year for Region 2, which is all of Hampton Roads and beyond. I'm currently the Executive Director of Brain Balance Virginia Beach, where physical activity is a key component we use to improve brain function and significantly help struggling students. To understand the long-term benefits of recess, I wanted you to be able to see this. This is an iceberg that shows the different stages of brain development. So I guess I'll just hold it up. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this very well, but I'll explain what's on it. So our brain development starts at the bottom of the iceberg with level 1, primitive reflexes, and works its way up through levels 2 through 4, which is the development of our sensory motor systems. If these levels develop properly, then the learning brain, which is up here right below the surface of the water, can build on top of that fully mature sensory motor foundation and perform well in the areas of focus, behavior, learning, emotion, and social skills that we can see on the surface that, of course, we, our teachers and parents want to be mature for our kids. But if there are weaknesses in the sensory motor systems in these earlier stages, the learning brain will be negatively affected, and we'll see students struggling in any or all of these areas above the surface. So how does more recess fit into this discussion? Well, as the iceberg shows, the sensory motor stimulation that takes place during recess is developing the critical foundation to a mature learning brain. In fact, the developer of our Brain Balance program says that if kids are not moving their bodies, they're not building their brains. In addition, there's a new area of genetics called epigenetics that has discovered that insufficient physical activity is turning off brain-building genes across our population. And once turned off, they can be passed on in the off position for up to 11 generations. This is resulting in a snowball effect where kids are being born with more and more deactivated brain-building genes, resulting in worsening brain development. This is the main reason why we're seeing the dramatic rise in focus, behavior, and learning struggles in our classroom. So the second long-term benefit of increasing recess is that it will help turn these dormant genes back on so students' brain development can get back on track, and less students will struggle with focus, behavior, and learning in the future. It's also important to note that the most powerful form of recess is free play because it allows for more development in the areas of social skills and executive function. Executive functions are the highest, most important brain functions we have, things like problem solving, organization, prioritizing, time management, goal setting, planning, and more. And they are the last functions to develop. They're the last parts to develop in that learning brain up at the top. Free play is beneficial all the way through 5th grade. Some people have concerns that student behavior during free play might be a problem, but free play does not have to mean chaos on the playground. There are ways of structuring free play environments for all ages that prevent behavior issues. Obviously, I can't go into a lot of detail on the science here in 4 minutes, but I would love if you guys would like to come back and go a little bit deeper with you if you'd like. Thank you.
Next, I have Jessica Owens, Brian Owens, then Jeff Malone, number 122.
Okay. Good afternoon, or good evening. I'm not a politician, and I never expected to be standing before you. 3 weeks ago, I saw the vacancy open on the school board and thought, I'd love to advocate for kids that way. Wouldn't it be great to have a school board member who hasn't had to court special interest groups or make promises to other elected officials, someone who can objectively listen to ideas and proposals, ask questions, compare the data against their own expertise about child development, and make decisions they feel is in the best interest of children, teachers, and the schools. Someone who sees policies through a trauma-informed lens. including how bilateral movement, like running, heals trauma in the brain, recess team. And just like that, I thought, I can do that. My question was, would the board support someone like that? The overwhelming answer that I received from friends, neighbors, and colleagues across the spectrum, from social services to school staff to law enforcement to CHKD, has been, make them hear you. We support you, and the children deserve it. Our teachers do too. So I put myself out there, told my story about being a teen parent, about navigating our school system, and advocating for my son's special learning needs in our schools. After the issues with the initial appointment, I understood that there would be a higher level of scrutiny of applicants. There should have been. However, I was not expecting the made-up stories and accusations. So I want to hopefully take a minute to clarify the ones that I can. I live with my significant other. He's an active duty Master Chief in the Navy. His home is my residence. I'm not on his mortgage. My driver's license, voter registration, bank statements are all consistent. Rose Hall District has been my home for some time, and even prior to my current residence, I lived for 6 years in the Thalia neighborhood, and Thalia deserves a voice. I lived for 6 years in Twin Canal, and Twin Canal voices matter. I've never been charged with crimes. I don't own property in Norfolk. My jobs have always required background checks annually. I'm also not a quitter. In fact, I'm a fighter for children and for those who are too often marginalized, whether for income or race or culture or special needs. And I'm ready to fight for all of us if you're ready to have that. Thank you.
Next, I have Brian Owens, Jeff Malone, Alexandra Hightower, number 123.
Thank you, Virginia Beach City Public School Board. I'm a graduate of Virginia Beach City Public School System. I've worked in Virginia Beach City Public Schools for 7 years, both at SeaTac Elementary and Green Run Elementary. In my mother's living room, there sits a certificate of appreciation for 25 years of service in Virginia Beach Public Schools. We are a Virginia Beach education-loving family, and Jessica Owens is my sister. She's always had a heart for children, from helping to watch and raise me, to mentoring teen girls, to being a dedicated mother. But this position isn't just about being idealistic or having a heart that's in the right place. You can't just choose the person with the best volunteer stories, even though Jessica has hundreds of them. When Jessica was hired into the Virginia Beach Child Protective Services, the city of Virginia Beach gave her a vote of confidence. We trust Jessica Owens with the children of Virginia Beach. We trust her with their well-being. We trust her with their most sensitive issues. As she was promoted through Child Protective Services, the city logged more votes of confidence. We trust Jessica to take information and make the right measured decision about the children of Virginia Beach. When she was hired in the foster care system, another vote of confidence for Jessica Owens. When Jessica was chosen for the Policy Advisory Committee for Child Protective Services, the vote of confidence was, Jessica Owens has such impressive experience, we trust her to craft policy that directly affects the children of Virginia Beach, similar to the esteemed board members in front of me now. I'm not asking you to choose Jessica because she's a devoted member of the community, even though she is. I'm not asking you to choose Jessica because her life has been dedicated to the children of Virginia Beach, even though it has. The city of Virginia Beach has chosen Jessica Owens over and over because of her dedicated and demonstrated experience. So I'm asking you, as representatives of the city of Virginia Beach, to make the right decision and choose Jessica Owens again. Thank you.
Next, I have Jeff Malone, 122, Alexandra Hightower, 123, Yvonne Kotnick, 124.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Just
Okay.
continue with remarks.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jeff Malone. I live in Virginia Beach, 5641 Curry Circle. Been living there since July 2017. Question I have very quickly, it's a rhetorical question. what was it about Mike Mullins? What did y'all feel like qualified him to the point where y'all voted for him 9-0? This is a rhetorical question. The first thing I'm gonna do, I was here 2 weeks ago, speaking on behalf of Seiko Varner. I'm gonna finish the part I wasn't able to finish reading then. All right, Seiko has worked as a school counselor liaison and later as a special education teacher in Portsmouth. In Virginia Beach City Public Schools, Seiko has worked as a special education auditor and a special education teacher's assistant. As a college and career counselor with the Access College Foundation, Seiko provided support and guidance to families in Norfolk's Booker T. Washington High School and Virginia Beach's Green Run High School. I cannot stress enough to this board the commitment and energy Seiko will bring to this board to do the work on behalf of the citizens and students of Virginia Beach, and specifically the Rose Hall District. Seiko is a man of great integrity. My wife, Shay Malone, and I wholeheartedly recommend that Mr. Seiko Varner be appointed to fill the Rose Hall District vacancy on the Virginia Beach City Public School Board. Okay. Now, the other thing too, am I permitted to read scripture in here?
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Permitted to read scripture? Okay. So I'm just going to read some scriptures. Like I said, I know one of the so-called qualifications of Mike Mullins is that he was a church man. So I'm going to read some verses. Today is May 28th. I'm just going to read some verses from Proverbs chapter 28. The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Those who forsake the law praise the wicked, but those who keep the law strive against them. Evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it completely. Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. If one turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer is an abomination. When the righteous triumph, there is great glory, but when the wicked rise, people hide themselves. Whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. It's all in the same chapter. Whoever walks in integrity will be delivered, but he who is crooked in his ways will suddenly fall. To show partiality is not good, but for a piece of bread a man will do wrong. Whoever rebukes a man will afterward find more favor than he who flatters with his tongue. All right, those are all verses from chapter 28 in Proverbs. Now, Mr. Spence, we met about 2 months ago at Norfolk State University during the documentary for America to Me. One thing I want to make sure that I communicate is a lot of us, including, I can speak for myself, we're not just advocating for Seiko because he's a person of color or a black man. As you saw in the documentary, just because somebody, thank you, just because somebody is black doesn't mean that they will speak on behalf of black students or all students in general. One thing I can say about Seiko, once again, like I said before, I've known him since 2000. He's always been a man of integrity. He's not just he's for all people of Virginia Beach, not just one sector, but all people. So please listen to us. Please listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Alexander Hightower, Yvonne Kotnick, Eleanor Butts, number 125. Yvonne Kotnick, Eleanor Butts, Anthony Staton, number 126.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Yvonne Kotnick. Hi, I'm here also to speak on behalf of my friend Morgan Pierce, who couldn't make it tonight. So I'm reading hers first, and then I follow with mine. I'm a mother of soon-to-be 3 children, and I worked with teenagers and young adults across the country as a drug and alcohol abuse counselor for 13 years, prior to starting my own family. I say that because, in my opinion, there has been a serious decline in overall mental and emotional health in children. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. We are very hesitant to send our children to public school. The stress, pressure, and drive to prepare them for college is way too much for us. We are more concerned about their overall mental and emotional health and enjoyment of life than college transcripts. While we do not believe that giving more recess will suddenly cure the health crisis, we do believe it makes a strong dent. We strongly believe it makes an important dent into it. Play is so important. Why can't life be fun? Free play is crucial, and we're raising an adult-dependent generation. Our generation's parenting is constantly chided as kids can't think for themselves and they're entitled. They're losing the ability to think critically, and creativity, imagination, fun, conflict, and problem solving are all things that come for children independently during free play. Thank you. So why can't school be fun for kids? We have considered homeschooling despite the stigma that kids wouldn't be socialized. Well, schools are actually much more antisocial than homeschooling is. So I thank you for listening, and I hope you will follow what is best for our children. Now to my words, and I'm going to treat you to some imaginary ice cream. So imagine you're a child or a parent buying your child some ice cream. You each get to order a kid's ice cream. Over on this side, you get a double scoop with whipped cream and rainbow sprinkles. Your side gets one scoop with chocolate sprinkles. Middle section, I'm sorry, you get whatever I scrape out of the box. Now, what will you say as a child or the parent ordering that ice cream? That's not fair. You're probably wondering, why didn't you all get the same kid's ice cream? Parents, you're asking the shop owner, what's up here? Why is there a difference? What will you say when the answer is, oh, we leave that up to our employees. The rule is all kids need to get some ice cream, but extras like cream and sprinkles are totally their decision. Not fair, is it? Wouldn't you all wish you had ordered what they ordered? Well, this ice cream is recess. By not having a policy in place, you're allowing some kids to get the double scoop, whipped cream, rainbow sprinkle recess, where others get whatever's left in the box. Is that really fair? We are asking for a policy to make it fair, to make sure every child in this district get the same amount of recess, no matter what school they attend. So do what is best for our children and give the double scoop whipped cream, rainbow sprinkle recess to all children at all schools. Thank you.
Eleanor Butts, Anthony Stanton, Siobhan Malone, number 127.
Good evening. My name is Eleanor Butts, a resident of the city for more than 40 years. Like the previous speaker, I did not expect to be here. But my spirit was disquieted today as I pondered whether I dare do this. I got peace once I decided to stand up for SACO and for a process that is fair and equitable. I'm here to express my concern with the way the entire process of filling a vacancy on the school board has played out. I question what process is in place for vetting prospective members of this board. This fiasco does not bode well for the city of Virginia Beach, and I and the citizens of this city deserve better. In the interest of full disclosure and transparency, Seiko Varner is my nephew by marriage, but with full acceptance into our family. I would not be standing here if I did not truly believe that Seiko is more than qualified to serve as a member of the Virginia Beach School Board. Seiko was raised in a family that gave back to the community. He's blessed with a heart to serve others, as has been demonstrated by his history of community service without seeking accolades for himself. He worked with at-risk students in the Portsmouth public school system for more than 10 years, several of those years as a special education teacher. For more than 10 years, he has organized and sponsored Neighbor in Action Fests at Rosemont Boys and Girls Clubs, as well as other events where he invited speakers to provide information and resources to the community. He worked as a college and career advisor for the Access College Foundation. He developed the Golden Fold Mentorship Program through his fraternity. This program mentors young people and provides various activities for young men from middle through high school. It started in Virginia Beach, but has expanded to Suffolk and is viewed as a model by other organizations as well. He was a volunteer for the mentoring program for young men at Green Run High School. Seiko is prepared educationally as he has earned a master's degree in special education from Regent University with an endorsement in educational leadership. He is a graduate of the United Way of Southampton Roads Project Inclusion, a board governance leadership and development program. He has also completed the Sorensen Institute for Political Leadership. You can see that Seiko has prepared himself his whole life for such a time as this. In addition to his community service work, his education and experience, his son is a graduate of the Governor's STEM Academy at Lansdowne High School, and his daughter is completing her junior year at the Virginia Beach Performing Arts Academy at Salem. So he has a personal relationship with Virginia Beach schools. I ask that you give careful and deserved consideration to Seiko Varner as the next member of the Virginia Beach City School Board. Thank you.
Next, I have Anthony Stanton, 126, Siobhan Malone, then Lindsay Nathaniel.
To the school board, good evening. I started today with looking over the letter that I submitted on behalf of Mr. Seiko Varner several weeks ago. And as I've stood back in the back of the room and heard what everyone has had to say, I'm not going to read what I already sent you. I'm simply going to say this. If you're looking for someone to fill this vacancy that is going to work hard, that is going to be committed, that is going to be honest, that is going to be transparent, that is going to speak what's on his mind, which is going to be truthful, then Seiko Varner is your person that you want to hire and put on this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Siobhan Malone, Lindsay Nathaniel, then Patricia Stanton, 129.
Good evening. Forgive me in advance, I did not prepare my remarks. I grew up in Virginia Beach. I went to Trentwood and Lynn Haven, not Lynn Haven, Lincoln Park as a kid. And I played with a diverse group of friends. I moved away, came back. I was at Green Run High for my last year, once again with a diverse group of friends. I have worked as a math tutor in the Virginia Beach middle schools for the past 4 years or so, off and on. And I get a chance to talk with the students often. We currently homeschool our own child, our oldest child. We have 2. We currently homeschool. We are flexible with that decision. At some point, it may best fit our family for him to go to a Virginia Beach public school. I would like to know that if he does go to a Virginia Beach public school, that as a young black man with learning differences, as an exceptional learner, that he would not have to face any type of discrimination or prejudice. It is concerning to me, as an educator, as a mother, as a resident of Virginia Beach, that the original selection for the school board, Rose Hall District, would not assure me in that way. So that is the first part of what I want to say. The second part is directly in support of Seiko. I met him several years ago, and I met him when we were working on an educational program. I'm the founder and executive director of a local nonprofit. One of the things we do is support educators. We support education for students who are underserved, for families that are underserved, especially for exceptional learners. He was brought in as somebody who is knowledgeable about education and who may be able to help. Since then, I've met him and been in the same kind of networking circles, and I've seen how he works and interacts with different people, and I've seen his love for kids. And I can say without reservation that he is the type of person who works very hard to ensure that people are supported, connected, and heard. And that is the type of people that I would hope our school board is full of. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Lindsay Nathaniel, Patricia Stanton, Seiko Varner, number 130.
Hello, I am the person who found and shared Mike Mullins' social media post and wanted to explain why I felt so strongly and still do about the appointment process. I'm glad to hear that there will be better vetting process in place moving forward, but there's a bigger issue here that the brave 7th grader who spoke earlier brought up. There was a missed opportunity to add diversity with well-qualified candidates. Diversity matters. My daughter came home from school the first day of 8th grade this year, excited, because she had a new principal. Her exact words were, "It's going to be a great year, Mom. He looks like me." She's been going to school in Virginia Beach since kindergarten and has never had a teacher or principal who looked like her. My daughter wanted to come speak tonight to look you in the eyes and say how she felt when she saw the post. But she fears if she becomes outspoken, she'll become a target at school. A little background. My almost 15-year-old biracial daughter has dealt with racism and bullying in Virginia Beach schools for years. She's been told by peers that she must be adopted because she doesn't look like me. She's been told to drink bleach to fit in with her peers. She's been called racial slurs countless times. I reached out to the school board, did not hear back. When racism has been caught on video, administrators were telling children to delete it, I'm assuming out of fear that it would go viral. She lives in her skin every single day and feels like you failed her with your decision. Your decisions impact the trust both parents and students have in our children, and you did fail the students of color.
Patricia Stanton, 129, Seiko Varner, 130, David Nygaard.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Stanton. My heart is really heavy here. I had written something the last time, and I wrote something again this time about Seiko, but I heard those students ask for diversity on the school board. Did you hear them, the students, ask for diversity on the school board? That should speak volume. That should speak volume to you. Seiko is the person for this position. He was the person the last time. He's still the person for this position. And I ask that you do the right thing. Honor those students and select Seiko Varner.
Seiko Varner, David Nygaard, Whitney Davis, then Lisa Wall.
Madam Chairwoman, Dr. Spence, school board members, administrators, and citizens. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to speak, and I'm honored with this opportunity. I'd like to thank the people who came to support Jessica Owens, and I'd like to support those and thank those who came to support me. I said last time that I was a student who needed a counselor, and I became a counselor. I was a student who had special needs and learning, and I became a special education teacher. I come from a community that needs leaders, so I became a leader. And I wish to continue leading with you so we continue leading our school system and our students into the bright path that I know we all have envisioned for this school system. After we finish today, I want to invite everyone to Green Run High School. We have an event at Green Run High School called A Stronger Village. It's one of my events, so everyone come. It's free with free food, and we have some great speakers who are going to speak about how we can continue making our community safer, stronger, and smarter, how we can have that stronger village. And you are all a part of our village, so I invite all of you to show up tonight. Once again, it's free with free food. I've realized that sometimes I can be a little difficult to understand because I listen to both sides. I'm not one-sided. I listen to everybody. So I confuse my wife. I listen to CNBC and I listen to Fox News. And she can't reconcile that. My family can't reconcile that. But I find the best solutions when I listen to diverse voices. And there's been a big talk about diversity. And so I want to fight for that diversity. I'll fight for that diversity by giving you a little background on me. So my mother, on her graduation day, was beat unconscious by an ex-boyfriend. 3 days later, after she woke up, she decided that she was going to focus on education so she can eradicate some of the problems in Atlanta, Georgia. She went to college, graduated, and then decided she wanted to go to obtain a master's degree. She applied, and the college wouldn't accept her because of who she was at that time period. She went to a pastor and asked her, "Pastor, how can I get involved? How can I do the things I want to do when society's not letting me educate myself?" He said, "Well, I just went to a school, Columbia Theological Seminary. They allowed me to join. Why don't you join?" So she applied, and he was the first person of color in that program. She was the first person of color and the first woman of color to graduate with a master's degree in that program. While she was there, the president said, "I know you're about to drop out. I have a solution. You need a friend." He called a friend he had in Scotland, and that Scotland friend said, "In my program, I have the first young man of color to ever teach and preach here in Scotland. He's coming back to Georgia in 2 months." They made sure that this young man was the support system for that young lady. She didn't drop out. They dropped into each other's lives. They became my parents. Let's move forward.
David
Thank you.
Nygaard, Whitney Davis, Lisa Wall.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, if I may be candid with you, we are no stranger to politics. Throughout my election and short tenure as city councilman for the Virginia Beach District, I've gotten to know Seiko Varner. Like some of you, I shared the Democratic ballot with him. He was vetted by the voters and the ballot process of the party and the NAACP, just as we were. But somehow politics has crept into these closed-door meetings of school board. And those meetings bother me as a former student of Virginia Beach and a product of Virginia Beach Public Schools and as a parent of students. And there's something to be said for the political games that have left our city in such an upheaval, and it's time that we end these games. We have a process for a reason, and that process calls for transparency. It calls for vetting candidates through campaigns in the public arena. Now, I'm familiar with that process because there's been no campaign or tenure that was met with more scrutiny, more vetting, and more media coverage than my own. Now, Seiko campaigned too with me as part of that public and transparent process, and many of you here ran with him. When Seiko Varner ran, he ran with integrity, and after the campaign, he went back to do more good work for the students of Virginia Beach, mentoring groups like he mentioned at Green Run, and advocating for workforce development and special education. That's got to count for something. Now, we know the unanimous vote that created the only political tenure, probably shorter than my own, resulted in a potential school board member you wouldn't want to preside over teachers and students. It's time as a city we support greater diversity in our public boards. Mr. Mullins did not represent the diversity we need. Now, we appreciate the apology and the changes to the policy. I know last week's vote is not how you feel unanimously about Seiko Varner, and even if it was, the students and the teachers would disagree with you. As a fellow regional alum, I support Seiko Varner because I know him, I appreciate his commitment to improving education, to special education, and especially workforce development. He was already vetted throughout the most recent and contentious campaign, and he deserves your support. Thank you.
Whitney Davis and Lisa Wall.
Good evening, Dr. Spence, Chairwoman Anderson, and members of the board. My name is Whitney Davis. I'm from Norfolk. I have 2 little girls, a rising second grader, a rising kindergartner, and they go to Norfolk Public Schools. I'm also a former kindergarten teacher, and I'm a member of More Recess for Virginians Norfolk. I'm here tonight because I support recess for all elementary schools, but especially because kindergarten has a special place for me. I'd like to read you an excerpt from an article on kindergarten published about 2 weeks ago in the Washington Post. Kindergartners should love and be excited about school. Their first year of formal education should be a magical year. Early education expert Dorothy Strickland said that a child's first learning experience determines the child's attitude towards school for years to come. She maintains that the primary focus of kindergarten should be executive functions, such as problem solving, organizing, sequencing, conflict resolution, decision-making, and reasoning. As kindergarten registration gets underway for the 2019-20 school year, let's consider these questions. Which methods are working to achieve the goal of best educating young children, and which are not? These days, words you will hear some educators and decision makers use when discussing kindergarten curriculum are rigor, stamina, technology, standardized testing, data. I would argue that joy, character building, social emotional learning, recess, multisensory, hands-on, interactive learning, and multiple intelligences are more appropriate terms when it comes to discussing the kindergarten learner. According to a major 2018 study by the AAP, the most powerful way children learn is on playgrounds and in playrooms. Play is brain building, a central part of healthy childhood development, a key to executive function skills, and a buffer against the negative impacts of stress. It is mind-boggling that in our current climate, major research has to be conducted to reiterate what 100 years of research has already concluded. Kindergarten-age children learn best through action-based, hands-on activities that engage their five senses, yet we continue to push practices that have been proven ineffective and counterproductive for most students. As you consider changes to your recess policy, and specifically whether you should make it a policy or just a guideline for your administrators, please consider first and foremost the research and best practices in childhood learning and development. If you do this, really do this, it will be abundantly clear what the course should be. To make more recess a school policy. This is especially important for our youngest learners. Limiting their recess time limits their learning time. The playground is just a different type of classroom, but the benefits of what our kids learn there are immeasurable. Thank you.
Lisa Wall.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Wall. I've been a resident of Virginia Beach for almost 20 years. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the civil discourse in this room this evening. It seems like, for the most part, we are all pretty much in agreement. We are in agreement that recess is good for kids and that Mike Mullins was not the best choice for school board. Okay? What I want to talk about is, I understand that there's been misinformation proliferated on the internet regarding Ms. Owens' residence. I can personally testify that I have personal knowledge that she has lived at her residence on Lake Ridge in the Rose Hall District for almost a year now. And the truth is, Ms. Owens resides in a home sharing situation with her significant other. She's been living there with him for almost a year, but her name isn't on the mortgage, like she said earlier. And she didn't immediately change her driver's license and voting registration on the day that she moved in. I think that this controversy about her residence highlights a disenfranchising attitude towards some of our community members, perhaps hitting the lower income, minority, and female residents disproportionately. And I want to address this. As a school board, you are tasked with representing all of the students and staff. We have many families in Virginia Beach who home share for a variety of reasons and may not have their name on a lease or mortgage, and their children go to our public schools. We are a military community in Virginia Beach. As the wife of a veteran myself, when we moved from duty station to duty station, we didn't always update our driver's licenses and voting registration immediately after we moved. These processes take time, resources, sometimes money, and frankly, they're just not always at the top of our priority lists. I feel confident that there are many families of school-age children in the Rose Hall District and across Virginia Beach who have experienced home sharing or have experienced the challenges and obstacles of moving residences, and I think it would be reasonable to have someone on the school board who may understand these dynamics. Perhaps someone on the school board sitting here now has experienced that situation where you're not on the mortgage or the lease. And if we haven't, then maybe it's time to represent all of the families who live in our city. I don't think that we should use this information to disenfranchise these individuals, and I certainly don't think that it should be held against Ms. Owens. Regarding someone recently falsely insinuating this Ms. Owens had a criminal record or owned property in Norfolk or something and putting it out on social media, I think this is a reflection of either inadequate research, as we recently saw with Mr. Mullins and we're hoping won't happen again, or it could be an intentional, unethical, and unscrupulous attempt to knowingly smear an upstanding community member and a strong candidate. And I truly hope, and I really just want to ask, that that false and devious narrative is not a factor when you are making your decision. I saw on, I think it was Ms. Manning's Facebook page, that the unanimous 9-0 vote for Mr. Mullins was not actually unanimous or something. And I think that in the spirit of real transparency, and we've heard a lot about transparency this evening, the public should be made aware of those initial straw poll results. I think that in conclusion, Jessica Owens has the personal experience as well as the professional experience, a perfect combination of child welfare, caring about the children of our community, as well as developing curriculum and teaching to be able to well represent the Rose Hall District. Thank you.
Madam Chair, those are all the speakers that I have signed up for the hearing on agenda items.
Thank you to everyone who came and spoke this evening. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our May 14th meeting. The motion is made by Mrs. Riggs, seconded by Ms. Melnick. The voting board is open.
That's okay. Thank you.
Motion has passed. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our special meeting on May 21st. The motion is made by Mrs. Manning, seconded by Mrs. Melnick. The voting board is open. Motion is passed. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our emergency meeting on May 22nd. The motion is made by Mrs. Hughes, seconded by Mrs. Riggs. The voting board is open. Motion is passed. Next is the adoption of the agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening. Mrs. Rye has made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Melnick. The voting board is open. The agenda for this evening has been adopted. On the consent agenda, item A is the Dominion Energy easement for Thorogood Elementary. Item B contains 5 policy review committee recommendations. The items are new policy 3-61, tobacco and nicotine vapor products. Number 2, policy 5-2, student rights and responsibilities. Number 3, policy 5-56, contagious and infectious diseases, immunodeficiency virus, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. Number 4 is policy 7-31, parent-teacher associations. Number 5, policy 7-32, gifts, grants, and bequests. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion is made by Ms. Manning, seconded by Mrs. Hughes. The voting board is open. The motion has passed. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the personnel report and administrative appointments. Mrs. Melnick has made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Felton. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Manning?
So when I was in workshop, I saw an email pop through from Ms. Skidmore, and just the subject was administrative appointments, and I did not have a chance to take a look at that. I just want to verify that's not what we're voting on right now.
You're not. Those are administrative reassignments.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you're not voting on those.
Thank you.
Right. That would not be something that we would send at the last moment. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, the voting board is open. The administrative appointments have been passed. Dr. Spence, would you like to introduce our new administrators?
I would. Thank you very much. If I could start by asking Andrea Chambers to please stand up. Oh, there she is. Andrea, you have served with distinction as a teacher at Green Run Collegiate. She's most recently been serving, and you all last year appointed her to a position as administrative assistant at Lansdowne High School. And I'm pleased that this evening you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the assistant principal at Lansdowne High School. Congratulations. And I believe you have some guests with you? Thank you so much for being here. If I could next ask Ryan Schubart to please stand up. Oh, he's already standing. Mr. Schubart has served with distinction in Virginia Beach as a teacher at First Colonial High School, an assistant principal at Princess Anne High School. Most recently has been serving as an assistant principal at Frank W. Cox High School, and I'm pleased that this evening you've accepted our recommendation for him to serve as the next principal of Kellam High School. Congratulations, Mr. Schubart. And I believe you have guests as well.
My wife, also 2020 Tollwood Teacher of the Year. And my son, Harrison, 7-year-old.
All right.
You know, you're still employed by Mr. Kelly. You might want to just acknowledge that he's here for a couple more days. Thank you, Mr. Schubart. If I could ask Alvin Trey Malis to please stand up, please. Trey has served in Virginia Beach with distinction as a teacher at Renaissance Academy, at Tallwood High School. He has been a teacher at Virginia Beach Middle School. Most recently has been serving as administrative assistant at Virginia Beach Middle School. And I'm very pleased this evening you've accepted our recommendation for him to serve as a coordinator of distance learning in the Department of Teaching and Learning. Congratulations. And you have guests. Thank you very much. And finally, if I could ask Jennifer Moulton to please stand up. Jennifer is new to Virginia Beach. She has served almost all of her career as a either in childcare or as a program director of and recreation assistant, and then most recently as a teacher at Court Street Academy in Portsmouth, a teacher at Churchland High School in Portsmouth, and most recently as a program specialist in Portsmouth Public Schools and for exceptional education. I'm pleased that this evening you have accepted our recommendation for her to serve as a coordinator of special education in the Office of Programs for Exceptional Children in the Department of Teaching and Learning. Congratulations. And I believe you also have some guests with you.
I do. I have my parents here with me, my dad, Robert Jackson, my mom, Sandy Jackson. I also have two friends with me, Sharon Pilardi and then Sarah Scott, who is a teacher in Virginia Beach.
Thank you all for being here. We certainly appreciate your support of these great new administrators in Virginia Beach, and congratulations to each and every one of you. We look forward to working with you in these new capacities. Madam Chairwoman, that completes.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve the salary resolution for fiscal year 2019-2020. The motion is made by Mrs. Rye, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Mr. Edwards, would you please read the salary resolution?
I move that whereas the mission of Virginia Beach City Public Schools in partnership with our entire community is to ensure that each student is empowered with the knowledge and skills necessary to meet the challenges of the future. And whereas the school board has adopted a comprehensive strategic plan and school improvement priorities to guide budgetary decisions. And whereas the school board has studied the recommended school operating budget in view of state and federal requirements, additional demands for space and operations, the strategic plan, priorities, expectations, competitive compensation for employees, and best educational interests of its students. And whereas the school board's proposed operating budget has been reconciled to meet the funding from the city council, and whereas all employees will receive a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, and all employees on steps 1 through 30 will receive an additional 0.5% increase. And whereas the instructional experience-based and unified experience-based step scales, part-time hourly rates, high school department chairs and non-athletic supplements, and student activity rates titled below and shown in attachments are approved and will be effective as shown. And whereas the percent of compensation increases and the effective dates of the increases are as shown on attachments A through H, which have been provided to the board and published to the public. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board adopts the salary scales and the compensation increases as outlined in this resolution and attachments.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the voting board is open. The motion is passed. Next, we have reversion authorization. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the reversion authorization. Mrs. Riggs?
I move that the school board approve the use of fiscal year 2018-19 reversion funds to complete the funding of full-day kindergarten in fiscal year 2019-2020, with the exception of the 3 schools impacted by construction, and that the school board authorize the superintendent and the chief financial officer to implement full-day kindergarten in the remaining elementary schools not affected by current construction projects in fiscal year 2019-2020.
Is there a second? Mrs. Melnick has seconded. Is there discussion? Mrs. Manning?
So I've been on this board for about 2.5 years now, and for 2.5 years, I have heard almost every board member up here and Mr. Hunziker tell me that reversion money is one-time funding, one-time monies that should not be used for recurring costs. Full-day kindergarten is a recurring cost, and I just don't think that it's a wise decision to use this money for a recurring cost. I think that if accelerating full-day kindergarten was a priority, we should have had that discussion at the beginning of the budget season this year rather than at the end. I know that City Council has given us their recommendations that we use this money for accelerating the program, but I don't think that that's a fiscally responsible thing to do. I think that if this is a priority, we should go back to the budget this next year and make it a priority in the budget to fund it and implement it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards?
I share Mrs. Manning's concern. But I also had the opportunity to read the language that council put forth to the board regarding our reversion funds. I think the council is overstepping their directions on the use of reversion funds. I don't think it's an appropriate use of the funds, but they made it clear that if we didn't follow their direction, that we would likely not receive the reversion funds. So I will support the motion, certainly with reservations.
Mrs. Melnick?
So, waiting for the implementation of full-day kindergarten for me has been painful. When we had the opportunity to speed up the process, I felt that it was important to our citizens to make things equitable across the division. And so, how would City Council feel about that? We sat back and we watched in February when they held their retreat. And one of their topics was setting the priorities for 2019-2020. And they called those priorities the Big Five. Number 4 on that list was public education. And they specifically mentioned the benefits of full-day kindergarten. And so here we are today. Recently, we've had a few citizens address the board. They have been outspoken in their opposition to full-day kindergarten, and it has been suggested that VBCPS has an ongoing surplus of funds that can be used to fund kindergarten or can be used for teacher raises, and sometimes it's referred to as a slush fund. I just want to state for the record that is simply not true. Mr. Honsaker, would you mind just stepping up to the podium for a second? I just want to remind the public that in 1995, the school board overspent its annual budget by $12.1 million. Mr. Honsaker, as our CFO, understands the importance of sound budgeting practices and that we keep 2% of our operating budget on hand in case of unforeseen expenses. It's smart money management. So during a normal fiscal year, provided no budget adjustments are necessary, those reversion dollars, as they're called, are one-time opportunities to buy things like buses or HVAC systems. They are not intended to sustain ongoing initiatives like full-day kindergarten and raises. But now, City Council has specifically directed us to use our reversion funds for kindergarten, and it has made some of us very uncomfortable. So last week, Dr. Spence, Mrs. Anderson, Mr. Honsaker, myself, walked over to City Hall and we met with the mayor and the vice mayor, Mr. Bradley and Mr. Hanson. Yes, thank you. And we talked about it. They know we're uneasy about this. They recognize that. But at this point, we are following the direction of council. So I feel that we need to accept the direction of City Council and not let our difference of opinion with finances steer us off course. It's the right thing to do for our citizens and for our most precious stakeholders. Are you good with all? I mean, with the piece that I wanted you to stand there for?
Yes.
Okay.
I echo everything you said. Dr. Spence and I, we long conversations about this. We both felt like reversion monies, that's one-time money, should not be used for ongoing. But this is a special circumstance. And it's the right thing to do. As a CFO, I would be the first person to say, don't use one-time money for ongoing. But in this particular case, I agree that it's the right thing to do. During that meeting with the mayor and the vice mayor and David Bradley and the city manager, they gave me as a CFO and the superintendent some assurances that during the first 4 or 5 months of the fiscal year, since we won't have an appropriation of that reversion money probably until October, they will have city staff increase our cash flow by about $400,000 a month, which will cover our increased expenses. And that should, unlikely, in October we find that there's not sufficient reversion funds to cover the $5 million needed for full-day kindergarten, we can ask for an appropriation of the special school reserve funds, which now has about 10.7 million in it. And those two assurances, as a CFO, that's what I needed. I know that we're not going to run out of cash. I know that we'll be able to pay our bills, and I know there'll be an appropriation in October of that reversion monies.
And they knew we were uneasy.
Yes.
That we felt uneasy about this. Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Ronsiker.
Mrs. Hughes?
I would like to say that, first of all, there was never a question of whether or not we're going to have full day K. There was already a plan to put it in place the following year. The only question was, do we accelerate it 1 year? If this was to be a priority, it was not smart to neglect to make it a priority from the beginning of the budget talks. I'm new and learning about the budget, and I understand that using reversion funds for ongoing projects it's not a smart way to budget, and it's typically not done. However, $5 million is a relatively small portion, and I've spoken with Mr. Hunsaker, and he's explained that there's a backup plan. If this does in fact pass, though, the school board needs to be aware that this needs to be made number one priority. We have some competing priorities, which are teacher salaries or teacher compensation and full-day kindergarten, and neglecting to make full-day K acceleration a priority this year has moved that ahead of teacher compensation for next year, because now you're committed, and doing this at the last minute has caused that situation.
Thank you. This is Mrs. Rye.
So I would, of course, have a hope and an expectation that we as a body and collectively with our city counterparts moving forward can find a path that will reduce our reliance on reversion funds to fund kindergarten. And I do want to qualify as well that whether it's moot or not now, that it wasn't all going to happen in another year. We were told in our previous workshop with Mr. Hunsaker about, the 5-year plan. We're in year 3 now, and so it involved the extra layer of transitioning the Title I schools over. So,
Thank you. So, I'm one of those people who started this initiative in 2012. I campaigned on it. I've worked for it. I've begged for it. So when we finally decided that we were going to pursue full-day kindergarten, and we decided that we would do it on a gradual basis, mainly because 2 years ago, City Council did not appropriate funding to do all of it. So we thought we would take it slow. But now we've created an equity situation throughout our city where 9 schools were not going to have it, and everybody else was going to have it. Out of 54 elementary schools, only 9 would not have it next year. And so because of that, and because we started hearing from the constituents of people who lived in those 9 school zones, we began to think, this is just not fair. This is not right. We need to make it right. Let's do it. And so I had the majority of the board with me, and we decided to ask City Council to fund it. And so what they have come back with is they said, okay, go ahead and use your reversion funds for this year. And they've directed us to do so. And so I'm thrilled that we're going to get full-day kindergarten in all of our schools next year, except for the 3 that have construction issues. And then the following year, we'll be able to have full-day kindergarten in every elementary school in Virginia Beach. And I will be thrilled. I will be jumping up and down for that, because it's something I've worked for a long time. And I feel like we need to make this right. To have one of the best school systems in the state, we needed to be there. And so this will bring us up to par. So This will give everybody an equal opportunity across our city at least a year early. And I'm thrilled about that. So I will be supporting this initiative, even though I'm not happy about having to use reversion to do it this year. Hopefully we'll be able to absorb it within our budget next year and we'll make it right. So the other thing is, the biggest thing is, we were directed to do this by City Council. And so if we don't do this, I'm not sure we will end up with our reversion funds at all, because they have directed us to do this. And they can do that. They can decide what we can and cannot do with our reversion money. So therefore, I will be voting for this. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the voting board is open. The motion has passed. I thank my colleagues for your support. Next, we have budget transfers. The chair will entertain a motion for budget transfers as outlined in our agenda packet. Motion is made by Mrs. Riggs, seconded by Mrs. Melnick. Is there discussion? Mr. Edwards?
I think a short synopsis from the CFO would be appropriate since we
Thank
have
you.
not had this.
Mr.
funding information.
Heinziker? I was going to bring you up anyway.
Since you just voted to implement full-day kindergarten in the rest of the schools, we've got a lot of work to do between now and when school starts in September. So this transfer, the total is about it's $364,086. That's above the superintendent's threshold for moving money around. We'll be using these funds to buy the Chromebooks and the technology-related needs for the rest of the kindergarten classes that become full-day kindergarten, and we need to go ahead and get those orders post-haste. And that's what this is about.
So some of that money is one-time money anyway, right? A little bit. I mean, for the Chromebooks, et cetera, those type
yes.
things. Yes. Ms. Manning?
So I will echo what I echo every time we have this conversation about providing Chromebooks for every elementary kid. I just don't believe that it's advantageous to give every kindergartner a Chromebook. I think that we should giving them more recess rather than giving a Chromebook to every single kindergartner. And that's what these Chromebooks are giving. I don't think that we need to give Chromebooks to kindergartners. I think that we need to focus on other things. We need to limit the technology. We have technology executives in Silicon Valley who create these products who send their kids to technology-free schools. And I've been opposed to one-to-one technology in elementary schools. I will remain opposed, especially at the kindergarten level. Thank you.
So just to clarify that, we are not buying Chromebooks for every kindergarten student. Dr. Spence, could you clarify that just a little bit better?
Well, it's making a card available to each classroom.
Right, so they won't have Chromebooks available for each child. There will be a...
Okay, I'll clarify
card.
my statement. I don't
Thank
think they need Chromebooks, period.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Hughes?
Yes, having a card available in each class is, well, it's not issuing them, but it does have them available to them throughout the school day. I have been to many, many professional trainings where one of the things that's been discussed is that we have children who are 4, 5, sometimes even 6 years old who know how to operate every single app on their mother's cell phone and cannot properly hold pencils. I think there are some basic skills that children need to learn prior to being on technology all day. I do not think kindergartners need to be on Chromebooks.
As a former kindergarten teacher, I will state that I do not believe that students need to be on Chromebooks all day long. And there are many activities. I have been in the kindergarten classrooms. I see what they're doing. They are not on Chromebooks all day long. They are not using technology all day long. They are doing hands-on activities. But when you do need to put them on a Chromebook or on a technology piece, you need to be able to have it available, even if it's just for a 20-minute period where they're utilizing it for a particular class. So, any other?
If they're only using it for these short periods, wouldn't they be able to share carts instead of needing that
I
cart
think
for every
that's what they are
classroom?
doing, is sharing carts.
Is that what they're doing?
Dr. Spence?
So when we, and let's see, I don't see Shereen, but so I'll speak to this. So when we initially had Chromebooks at the kindergarten level, we had them sharing carts, and the feedback that we got consistently and rather vociferously from our kindergarten teachers was that they wanted to have a cart in their classroom so that they did not have to wait. So when I arrived in Virginia Beach in 2014, I had a kindergartner that first year, you all probably remember. And so I talked to him about his week and his day. So similar to recess, his conversation with me was, Dad, how come we only get to go to the computer lab for learning once every other week? And that was in and of itself its own challenge. So I understand we want to clap about recess, and I'm all for recess. I said as soon as we started this conversation, you're never going to hear me as a superintendent advocate for less play for our kids. I have many of them. So I have, and I still have 2 in elementary school, so I get it. But you're also not going to hear me say that our kids don't need to have access to technology. Okay, the screen addiction stuff that you're talking about is not what we do in our classrooms. And so if you want to talk about technology and what we do in our classrooms from a learning perspective, we can continue to have that conversation, because we've had that ongoing conversation with this board every year about how we're using technology in our classrooms. And I would be more than happy to come back and have another conversation with the board about how we're using technology in our kindergarten classrooms. But I promise you, if you were to go and you were today to ask our kindergarten teachers, would you like to get rid of Chromebooks, you're going to get a resounding no. That our teachers use them for learning purposes. They use them to create adaptive learning opportunities for students that allow them to stretch their learning and do so in appropriate ways and in ways that are balanced. So our community should not have again, because we're talking about it this way, should not have the impression that our children sit and stare at Chromebook screens all day long. It does not happen. I'm in our buildings every week. I understand very well the balance that we strive for. We use them appropriately. When we don't use them appropriately, we learn from that and we build our capacity around that. But it is incredible to me to think that in 2019, that when we say every person in this room, if I was to ask you to raise your hand, if you use technology today to solve a problem, to collaborate, to publish your thinking, every one of you walked up here, and most of you did not have something handwritten. Some of you were reading it off a phone. Others had been online today. You'd been sharing emails that you got from other people who wanted to share their thinking with you. And everybody in this room uses technology to solve problems and communicate, and we have to teach our children how to do that and how to do that appropriately. And we have to leverage the tools that we have. I know that's a very long answer, but I'm passionate about this. I'm not alone. Our teaching and learning team is passionate about this. Our teachers and our principals are passionate about this. And I agree, we have to have balance. And I feel strongly that we do have balance. And if it's out of whack, all we need to do is talk about where and when, and we can have that conversation separately.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. Mrs. Melnick?
Okay, well, I almost passed on that because that was nice. And I just want to just add on that when you walk into our schools, you will see children using glue sticks and crayons and markers and pencils and paper, and their work is hanging in the hallway, and it's not printouts from computers. Just visit a school and see what goes on every day. As Dr. Spence, we are not completely computer driven.
Mrs. Riggs?
I have to speak up. I said I was going to be silent and not, add to this, but I am a former 19-year kindergarten teacher, and I have worked with children for 37 years in the classroom. So I have been visiting a lot of kindergarten classes, first grade classes, third grade, fourth grade for the last 3 years since I've been on the school board. And it's my goal to go in and see what they're doing. I have never seen so much activity in a classroom as I have seen these last 3 years. So for people to get the idea by listening to all that's been, said these last several months, that our kids sit in these desks and do not move is totally, totally wrong. There is so much movement in the classroom and so much activity. I'm not saying they don't need recess, because believe me, I've been there. I taught it, I know. But they are getting a lot of activity and a lot of movement. These kids are not sitting in desks, and they're not staring at these computers. They are having them when they need them. And I agree with what Dr. Spence said about the technology. We've got to teach them how to use it in the proper way, and the way to do that is in the classroom. But these children, as Ms. Melnick said, are using glue sticks, crayons. The manipulatives they're using is just all over the place. And I really challenge you to be able to visit one of these schools and do it properly. Go through your principal, but go visit and see the activity that is being done. And I'm not just talking the K through 3. I'm talking K through 5, K through 12. The kids are not sitting in desks. That is the past. It no longer happens like that. There's lots of movement.
Thank you. Ms. Felton?
Yes, I'd like to speak to the fact that our kids are not all totally technology driven. I visit several of our schools, and they're very active. In instance, one example, went and visited a school, and they went to the computer to find out how to put together a old-fashioned wagon. Got the information from the technology, went back to their desk and began to build these from glue sticks and things that they had on hand, resources that they had on hand. Not only that, I visit Diamond Spring Elementary School on early Saturday mornings, where we have partnerships with Horizon Foundation that come in, teach the students how to read, and they're asking for books to come in, people to donate books. Not only that, even College Park Elementary have a partnership with a Smile With Me that go in and teach the children how to read and how to promote culture within reading. So I would suggest to, and ask your principal to go in and see what these students are doing other than sitting in front of the technology. And if some of the principals really push that students have an equal balance of the technology and reading and applying these things. Yes, my grandson, when I get stuck on my phone, he's a third grader. Yeah, he can walk me through that. But when he get through working me through that phone application and everything, we're reading. We're talking about what you learn in school and what you're doing in your class. But I would encourage you, Pembroke Elementary, Point of View, Betty F. Williams, the things that they're doing at Betty F. Williams with reading and connecting these things and collaborating with reading and technology, it's phenomenal. We can talk to you all day about it, but sometimes you need to get out to see what's actually happening and what's going on with these schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, the voting board is open. We're voting for the budget transfers as outlined in our agenda packet. Thank you. The motion is passed. The chair will now entertain a motion to vote on the 2 finalists for the appointment of an interim school board member residing in District 3, Rose Hall. The motion is made by Ms. Melnick, seconded by Mrs. Felton. Okay. Is there any discussion? Ms. Manning? The motion is to vote on the 2 finalists for the appointment of an interim school board member residing in District 3, Rose Hall. The vote will be between the 2 remaining candidates, and a vote of green will be for Mrs. Jessica Owens, and a vote of red on our voting board will be for Mr. Varner. So green will be for Mrs. Owens, and red will be for Mr. Varner. We assigned those alphabetically. The clerk assigned those today. And Mrs. Manning, you may speak.
Yeah, I'd just like to share some of my thoughts as I've been contemplating this vote tonight. As we came into the interview process and public hearing, I was looking forward to hearing from the public regarding their thoughts on who the board should appoint. I think that's really important. And we heard some great recommendations from all of the candidates seeking the Rose Hall appointment. What struck me most was how the people speaking on behalf of Mr. Varner gave specific examples of how he positively impacted their lives. Miss Salinas Williams spoke about how Mr. Varner helped her tremendously as her access advisor and taught her about fiscal responsibility. Miss Davis also spoke of his fiscal responsibility, and everybody knows that that's important to me. Ms. Parker told us that Mr. Varner has been an incredible impact on her son, who is in the Golden Ford Mentorship Program, and taught him that if it is to be, it is up to me. I like that quote, and I'm going to have to steal that from you, Seiko. Mr. Malone spoke about Mr. Varner's approachability, and I don't know if Mr. Malone's still here, but there you are. Thank you for your scripture. I love Proverbs 28. Thank you. And Miss Walker Holloway mentioned that Seiko is someone that doesn't forget your name. I thought that was really important. Probably the most compelling speaker was Miss Riddick, who revealed that Mr. Varner was like a second father to her child. There are important areas, two really important areas that we're working on in our school division that I think we need to focus our efforts. And those are special education and career and workforce development. Mr. Varner has been a special education teacher, and he currently works in the area of workforce development. And I think the assets that he would bring to this board are obvious. In the beginning of this process, I initially voted for closed-door meetings. That was a mistake, and I'm sorry. I'm also sorry for the events that ensued, and I hope the citizens of Virginia Beach will accept my apology. Ms. Wall, I wanted to address your concern, and I wish that I could tell you more about what happened in closed session and include letting you know how I voted, but I can't. I'm sorry. I would like to thank both candidates, Ms. Owens and Mr. Varner, for their willingness to serve in our great city. And most importantly, I would like to thank the citizens of Virginia Beach for taking the time to provide input in this process. It's so important. And we work for you, and I value your input. Thank you.
Any others? Mrs. Felton?
I'd just like to say that in voting for a closed session was a disappointment to me as well. Other things that we could go into, because of the closed session, we cannot speak on it, but I said to one of my colleagues, although we have the authority and the right to, and I wouldn't use the word right, but to appoint to this seat, I want to say to the community, this seat still belongs to you, and your voices matter. All that you have said, all that you put forth, your time, your initiative. And I would say to Mr. Varner and to Mrs. Owens, none of what you have done is not going unrecognized, because as you hear both candidates, they both bring very valuable things to the seat. But I just want to let the audience know that however it may be, I am one to do a thorough background check on my own. I am very, very apt at doing what I do and doing it well. But as I say, even though we are a board and we have the authority to do this position appointment, this seat does belong to you. And I just want to let you know that I do admire and I do appreciate all of you coming out. And it's really been spectacular, and I'm really impressed with all that you've done. Thank you. Showing up.
Mrs. Hughes?
I would like to say that I met Mr. Varner about a year ago when he and I were campaigning, and he and I agree on some issues and we disagree on some issues. But one thing I really like about Mr. Varner is that he always listens. He's always willing to listen to every point of view, and I think that's something that's very much of value on a board. I also know that he has spent more than a decade in the Rose Hall district. He owns a home. He's raising a family there. He's dug in. He has roots there. He started programs there, and one of them, as Ms. Manning said, is that he's worked very closely with special education. He's been a special education teacher, And that's something that's very near and dear to me and something that I think we need to pay a lot more attention to.
Mr. Edwards?
Certainly appreciate the two candidates that we will be voting on. Both have extensive community involvement. Both would potentially add diversity to our board, which I readily acknowledge we need. My vote will be primarily based on what they have said they would do to move the school board forward. And they said that in a 30-minute interview with the board. Again, I wish it had been public. It should have been, but the answers were of varying quality. They also said it in direct phone calls and emails to some of us, and in some cases, all of us. And I say that direct communication through the interviews in terms of specifically what they would do for our school division and how they would move it forward is particularly important to me, along with the comments from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mrs. Weems?
Thank you. And thank you both candidates for stepping forward for this important position. I will be casting my vote for Seiko Varner because I believe he's the best qualified, especially with workforce development and special education, to be a strong addition to this school board. I also think the board needs to seriously reevaluate its community engagement and transparency. Appointing a member to this elected board is a serious task, and although it's a process that doesn't happen often, we must make sure that the next one is completely open for public involvement. After all, this is their board for their children and their schools. I'd like to thank the Virginia Pilot Editorial Board for supporting the efforts of Ms. Manning, Ms. Hughes, and myself to hold last week's discussion in public. We should have done this. We should not hide, and this board should understand that public engagement and involvement results in better decisions with more voices at the table and more information for us to consider. We should open up this process, open up our policies now, so things like this will not occur in the future.
Mrs. Riggs?
I just want to say that we are very fortunate to have two diverse candidates for this position, and I really appreciate both of the candidates, the things they have done for our city and our children. And I think it is a very difficult decision with who we have here tonight. As Mr. Edwards said, we had interviews as well as many campaign pleads through the internet and the emails and coming and speaking to us both times. So I do agree it should have been an open session. Following whatever we decided to do was what had been done in the past, and I think that's what we kind of tended to go with. Obviously, I don't think that mistake will ever be made again, not with this board anyway. So thank you for coming and speaking tonight and sharing your feelings. We really appreciate it very much because we are here to serve you and our children. That's what's here. That's what we're here first for. Not for our own needs and our own agendas and our own desires, but for what the children need and what you need for your children. So thank you very much.
As I said earlier this afternoon, accordingly, I will be requesting that the school board and school administration work to develop a procedure for considering appointments to the school board vacancies that will address more transparency in the application and interview procedures, and appropriate vetting procedures, more extensive requests for applicant information, and better definition of the roles of the school board and the school administration in the application and appointment process. It's one of those things where, you know, I'm sorry to say that we have learned from this, but we will do our best to move forward and ensure that it does not happen again. Mrs. Rye?
Thank you. Most will agree when asked what the main responsibilities of a school board are: to appoint a superintendent, to approve and oversee the implementation of a budget, and to develop and approve school policy. This is the first appointment that developed since I was first elected in 2014. I would rank this responsibility with those three. So it's something I took very seriously, and I do regret where we fell short in the process. The other thing I'll add that doesn't need to be said probably, but I'll say it anyway because I don't want to minimize the responsibility we have here, but it's a reminder that this is a temporary appointment and that ultimately it's the electors who will make the more permanent decision moving forward beginning in November. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I'll remind you that if you vote for, if you choose to press the button for green, it will be a vote for Miss Jessica Owens, and a vote of red on our voting board will be for Mr. Seiko Varner. So the voting board is open. We welcome Ms. Jessica Owens as our new member to the school board, and we thank all the applicants, especially Mr. Varner, for participating in the process of this appointment. The next part of our agenda is information, and item A is the notification of intent to apply for federal grants in 2019 and 2019 and 2020.
Good evening, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, members of the board, and Dr. Spence. Oh, wait a second.
That's fine.
My name is James Poland. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Secondary Teaching and Learning. This evening, I will provide you with an overview of the 2019-2020 federal grant applications. Federal grant guidelines require school board approval of grant applications. The Virginia Department of Education has established an application deadline of July 1, 2019. This slide provides an overview of the past, current, and projected funding amounts for each grant. The final amounts for all grants will be determined in late September or early October of 2019. The Title I Part A grant is anticipated for just over $11.9 million. The application was prepared using level funding as well as free and reduced meals eligibility for schools to qualify for Title I services. Title I Part A funds provide additional financial assistance to schools with high numbers or high percentages of children from low-income families to help ensure that all children meet the challenging state accreditation standards. Two versions of the Title I Part A application have been included in the board packet for your review. One version reflects the decisions without full-day kindergarten expansion. The other version reflects funding decisions with full-day kindergarten expansion. The grant application supports pre-K support staff and resources, instructional staffing allocations beyond the division allocations for literacy leaders, math specialists, school counselors, behavior intervention teachers, gifted resource teachers, and an ESL teacher. Professional learning and family engagement, which are both mandatory components of the grant, are also included in the application. Since full-day kindergarten has now officially been funded, the Title I grant will not only be adding Bayside Elementary, it will also include Luxfor Elementary School. The Title I Part D Neglected, Delinquent, or At-Risk Youth Grant is anticipated for just under $226,000. The purpose of Title I Part D is to improve educational services to neglected and delinquent children and youth under the age of 21 in correctional facilities and to other at-risk populations to prepare them for secondary school completion, training, employment, and further education. In addition, the funds are used to support students residing in delinquent facilities and to support the transition of students from those facilities and the Virginia Beach Juvenile Detention Center back to VBCPS, including to the Renaissance Academy. The Title II Part A grant is anticipated for just under $1,600,000. The purpose of Title II Part A is to increase academic achievement for all students through improving teacher quality. The Title II grant will fund 17 literacy leaders and math specialists in elementary, middle, and high schools. Title III Part A is anticipated at just under $120,000. Title III Part A is utilized to continue funding the salary and benefits of an English learner instructional specialist. This specialist will assist the 32 division-funded ESL teachers as well as classroom teachers with instructional support and provide professional development for ESL and classroom teachers. The Title IV Part A grant is anticipated at just under $860,000. Title IV Part A funds are intended to improve students' academic achievement by increasing the capacity of school divisions to provide all students with access to a well-rounded education, improve school conditions for student learning, and increase the effective use of technology. Funding from the Title IV Part A grant will be used to support healthy schools by providing professional development and materials to support schools, to maintain a middle school summer reading intervention program, to assist low-income students with AP and IB testing fees, to support graduation labs for Kempsville High School and Bayside High School, and to provide Wi-Fi hotspots within targeted areas of the city. This grant will also support 1 middle and 2 high school coaching positions. Thank you for allowing me to present this information to you this evening. A group of us stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Mr. Edwards?
Yeah, can you give me a little more detail on with full day kindergarten now, we're moving substantial funds are now freed up for non-kindergarten services. And you mentioned Luxford Elementary. Is that the total amount of the differences, or can you?
I would ask my wonderful colleague, Ms. Silverman, to please come to the podium.
Good evening. Some of the additional items that have been added to replace the funding that took place from kindergarten being taken over by the division is the addition of Luxford as well as Bayside. In addition, we'll be adding 3 additional behavior teachers to support the social emotional growth of students and the needs for trauma to be addressed. We'll also be adding an additional ESL teacher to be on division set aside and available as needed based on a proactive approach. We'll also be adding 7.5 additional school counselors for elementary schools to be split between the needs of students, as well as 2 for our 2 middle schools. And we'll also be adding 2 additional gifted resource teachers to provide support and extension for students in 2 of our schools.
Nice. It's another plus for full day kindergarten. I mean, those are all good services, and I appreciate hearing that. So. Middle school services, what are we doing at middle school at Title I?
In middle school, we're providing supports we do have 1 school counselor being added to each, both Bayside 6 as well as Bayside Middle School. We're also adding 2 additional writing coaches for Bayside Middle School to provide supports in writing instruction. That goes in addition to the positions that have already been provided by Title I, which is 2 positions for reading and math for Bayside Middle, as well as a position in reading and math for Bayside 6.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Felton?
So, Ms. Silverman, you mentioned the ESL teacher. Will that be in one school, or will they serve? How many schools will the ESL?
So the ESL teacher will be funded out of a division set aside, which means they're available to be used as needed in each of the schools. We'll work in collaboration with the Department of Teaching and Learning to identify the needs in each of the schools and provide that additional instruction and supports. And it will be we'll be monitoring it in order to make sure that we're providing that additional support, and wherever there's the need, that's where they can be serviced. So they're not designated just to one school. It also supports schools in not removing funding from school discretionary accounts, because it helps to support the school in being able to use that funding to support their personal needs.
Because, for instance, like Harlem Elementary, which has a high population of Hispanic as well. So, according to their needs, is how you would disperse that. I'm just interested in it because,
Of course. We would work with Ms. Renee Collier, who oversees ESL, and her instructional specialists to identify the instructional needs based on the meetings that take place at the beginning of the school year, the minutes and services that are being provided to the diverse population that changes each year, and then based on the need, based on the instructional service minutes, and also based on the idea that Title I provides that additional support, not replacement support, we'll make sure that we disperse them and then monitor them. It's very possible that they will spend more of their time in one location than another because the location will have a demographic that needs that. But what we'll continue to do is monitor them to make sure that we're seeing how their supports are resulting in positive results, as well as we'll monitor to make sure that they are getting dispersed where they need it.
I can appreciate that, and my concerns for that as well. And I know that Principal Richardson is doing an awesome job with what he has there. But with this going along with Cook Elementary is a population of Hispanics, so I just want to make sure that we're getting an equal balance. Thank you so much. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I am excited about this extra ESL teacher. Thank you.
As are we. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have an update from the Recess Committee.
Good evening, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. My name is Nicole DeVries, and I'm the Director of K-12 and Gifted Programs in the Department of Teaching and Learning. I'm here this evening to provide you with information regarding changes to the elementary recess that will take place beginning in the 2019-2020 school year. As you recall, on April 9th, you received a workshop titled Elementary Recess Committee Update. During this workshop, we discussed the current elementary recess structure, the most recent state legislation providing local school divisions with more flexibility for providing recess, and a summary of data from a survey that went out to parents of current elementary students as well as elementary school staff. We also reviewed the work of the Elementary Recess Committee to examine possible alternatives to the current recess structure in Virginia Beach, and a summary of data from that survey. As a reminder, during the 2018 legislative session, legislation was passed for school divisions to include unstructured recreational time in any calculation of total instructional time, but not to exceed 15% of that total instructional time. This legislation prompted Virginia Beach schools to consider its current recess structure, an allotted time of 15 minutes per day. This school year, recess was increased to 20 minutes per day for full day K and grades 1 through 5. In December of this year, the Recess Committee was formed to further examine that time. I would like to take a moment to thank all of the Elementary Recess Committee members for their time and commitment to this very important topic. As you just heard several speakers say earlier this evening, elementary recess is a vital part of the school day for students, providing them with time to play and develop appropriate social skills. And I believe this evening, as one speaker stated, it's when and where children learn to navigate the world. There were a series of discussions about best practices in recess, legislation, scheduling, and safety. Input was provided from all of the stakeholders represented on the committee. Several committee members are here this evening. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge those people who are here and served on the committee, so if you could please stand to be recognized. The changes that you'll hear about this evening are a result of a combination of factors, including data from the survey that went out to parents of elementary students in Virginia Beach schools and elementary administrators, teachers, and school counselors, as well as the committee's recommendations made to Dr. Spence and his senior leadership team based on an examination of that survey data, the legislation, and research on recess from reputable sources such as the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics. During the April 9th workshop, we presented a review of the 3 committee meetings that had taken place up to that point. The 4th meeting, which took place following the workshop presentation, was used to finalize the committee's recommendation for changes to recess and begin to brainstorm suggestions for what should be included in a recess implementation guidelines document that will be developed for elementary staff. The following 2 slides will present these changes as well as next steps in the process for changing recess for the 2019-2020 school year. Currently, full-day kindergarten has 20 minutes of recess daily. Students have 5 minutes prior to or following physical education, and then an additional 15 minutes at any other point during the day, as directed by the school's master schedule. Kindergarten teacher assistants monitor this recess time. Beginning in the 2019-2020 school year, kindergarten, full-day kindergarten students will have a total of 40 minutes of recess daily. This is an increase of 100% in daily recess time for full-day K students. 15 minutes of designated recess time will take place immediately prior to or immediately following health and physical education class, with the health and PE teacher and PE teacher assistants serving as monitors. And 25 of the designated recess time, 25 minutes, will take place at the opposite time of day from health and physical education during instructional time, with the kindergarten teacher assistants serving as the monitor. Changes for recess in grades 1 through 5 will increase by 50%. Currently, grade 1 through 5 students have 20 minutes of recess daily that takes place immediately prior to or immediately following physical education. The PE teacher and PE teacher assistants serve as the monitors. Beginning in the 2019-2020 school year, students in grades 1 through 5 will have 30 minutes of recess daily. 15 minutes of the designated recess time will take place still at the immediately prior to or following health and physical education class, with the health and PE teachers and teacher assistants serving as monitors. The other 15 minutes of designated recess time will take place at the opposite time of day from health and physical education during core content instructional time, meaning language arts, math, social studies, and science time, with the classroom teacher serving as the monitor. It was important in our discussions as a committee that students were provided that opportunity for recess during both times of the day, both morning and afternoon. Survey data indicated that this was important to parents and school staff as well. Therefore, changes to recess for next year include these 2 distinct times for recess. This slide illustrates the average movement time for students in Virginia Beach schools compared to students in neighboring school divisions. As you can see, Virginia Beach is the only area school division that provides elementary students with PE for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, totaling an average of 150 minutes a week of active movement for just PE. When combined with the time of recess that students will receive daily at an average of 175 minutes per week, Virginia Beach elementary students will have an average combined total of 325 minutes per week, or 65 minutes per day of active movement. The next highest school division provides 213 minutes of active movement per week to students, which is 113 minutes less than what Virginia Beach provides. There are several next steps that will take place in order to ensure a smooth transition to the new recess structure at the start of the 2019-2020 school year. First, the Department of Teaching and Learning, school leadership, and media and communication will work together to develop and implement a communication plan to 2 main stakeholder groups, principals and school staff, and parents and community. Following tonight's presentation, a memo will go out to elementary school principals to make them aware of the recess changes so that they may consider those changes when developing their school schedules for next year. Media and communication will ensure that the changes are communicated to parents and the community through their regular outlets for information sharing, including social media and published newsletters. In order to support effective and equitable recess practices across elementary schools and classrooms, Health and PE Coordinator Sheila Jones will work with a group of administrators, health and PE teachers, and classroom teachers this summer to develop a recess implementation guidelines document for schools, which we do not currently have. This document will establish a common language around recess and recess expectations, as well as outline best practices in recess for teachers and assistants who monitor recess. In addition, topics such as playground safety, best practices for monitoring, and weather guidelines will be addressed. This implementation guidelines document will be accessible to elementary schools beginning Teacher Work Week in August. The development and implementation of professional learning for any teacher and teacher assistant who will be monitoring recess will be an essential next step. The professional learning will be available online, and staff will be provided a window of completion prior to the start of next school year. Finally, the Department of School Division Services continues, as they have done regularly, to monitor which schools need new and/or replacement playground equipment, and they do this on a regular basis. The administration is pleased to present these changes to recess that will provide students with increased time for self-directed activity, an opportunity to develop both social skills and overall physical fitness. This concludes the work of the Elementary Recess Committee. And at this time, I'm joined by VBCPS administration, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Mrs. Melnick?
Thank you for all of that. I know this was a lot of work. Thank you for coming and sharing every other week. As a former first grade teacher, I fully understand the importance of going outside and playing. I have boys who love nothing more than to be outside all day still, and they're a lot older. So just to recap, kindergarten will now be 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
Okay, so 15 minutes prior to or after PE, and that free play will be monitored by the
health and PE teachers. And then 15 minutes on the opposite end. And then same thing for grades 1 through 5, except it's 15 and 15.
Correct. Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate all that you all have done working together on this. It may not be everything that our committee mothers have wanted and asked for, but we are making progress. I think you would say that we are making progress. And as a former kindergarten teacher, I very much understand the need for recess and how it affects children. I was at one point accused by a principal of allowing a little bit too much recess, but sometimes as a teacher, when you know your kids need it, you've got to let them have it. So I think we have to be flexible in that understanding, and I think we will be. I think the teachers will have the opportunity to have that to be able to be flexible with that. So hopefully, so we'll see how this works. But I appreciate all that you all have done. Mrs. Weems?
Thank you, and thank you, recess folks, for being so pleasantly persistent and coming and sharing your thoughts, and I really appreciate that. Now, is this going to be guidelines or is this going to be a policy? Because I fear that if it's just guidelines, are we still going to have site-based decisions so that one elementary school is going to do one thing and the next elementary school do the next?
Yep. So that can go a couple different ways. So good question to ask. Thank you for raising it. As was referenced a number of different times, we have Regulation 5-581, where I think we could encapsulate both an expectation that the guidelines are adhered to, as well as a couple of the things relative to the time and all of that could be inside that regulation. Obviously, regulations carry all of the weight of administrative expectation and are not subject to whether or not they will be followed, but they must be followed. And so we could put it in there with reference to the guidelines document, as we sometimes do, and or the board could choose to write a policy relative to this, in which case one of the board members would need to refer it to the PRC for further discussion. So either of those can happen. Regulation, as you know, is more nimble, but certainly policy, if the board chose to take action on the issue, could put it in policy by referral to the PRC.
Okay, and the recess expectations, I guess the idea of some using recess as a form of discipline would be captured under that, recess expectations.
So that's already in policy? That's something that shouldn't be happening?
Right.
If that's happening, that just has to come to our attention, and if we
Okay.
know where it's happening, that's something that we can address through DOSL.
Okay.
That's already captured in policy.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it's not being followed. But I would definitely like to see a policy that, so that this has some meat on it. So I will be calling you, Policy Chairwoman. Thank you.
Mrs. Rye? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Edwards.
I had the same concerns that Mrs. Weems just expressed. I worry about site-based. I mean, I've got a reputation for worrying about site-based, and this is certainly an example where you know, we need to be consistent in at least executing what was laid out here, and I think I'd like to see a policy that was potentially a little bit more general, but provided the parameters of twice a day or something, and then let the minute details be in a regulation where it is. Mrs. Williams, I think you may have been on the board, but anyway, we went through this like 10, 15 years ago. It was a recess crusade that ended up going statewide, but it emanated out of Parkway Elementary right here in Virginia Beach. Remember that? Yeah. Well, anyway, and we thought it was successful. And you know what? Other pressures and parameters out of Richmond, as well as locally, kind of steamrolled over what the Parkway crusade had created in terms of exactly what you all have been asking for the last few months. So that's why I'd like to see it in policy, at least in terms of the basic parameters of twice a day and maybe an overall number of, amount of time, and then let the details flow in a reg. But, thank you.
Mrs. Rye?
Hi, so my questions are a little more specific. So it does sound like there'll be ongoing dialogue in whatever fashion, policy, guideline, but so in terms of the playground equipment, I've heard two things. From staff, I've heard playground safety as one of the issues to address, but from parents, we've heard about playground use. So will the two go hand in hand in this dialogue to come?
Yes, so as part of the implementation guidelines document, there will be extensive piece on playground safety. We examined as a committee a number of different school divisions, documents that have similar implementation guidelines, and they all address playground safety also. So Sheila Jones, who's our health and PE coordinator, who's here, was also just at a Shape America conference recently where she brought back a number of pieces of literature regarding safety on the playgrounds and safety during recess. And so all of that will be reiterated not only in the guidelines document, but also in the professional learning that we will develop for teachers. And
so I hear you telling me that this attention to safety implies that use will follow. I'm trying.
Yes. So,
or is there some reason that we do know of certain safety issues and it would be a time or cost issue to get certain equipment up to speed?
So I think, when Nicole's talking about playground safety, she's really talking about how to safely use a playground.
Oh, I should have
versus
qualified equipment.
Playground safety, which I think you're talking about equipment. You may have noticed that Mr. Freeman stood up.
I did.
Yes, he did.
I'd like him to step up and just talk briefly about what is currently and what our intentions are relative to playground equipment safety.
So regarding, I'll start with the maintenance of playground equipment, because that's two factors: there's maintenance and then there's upgrading the equipment that we have. So it's our landscape management division from the City of Virginia Beach that maintains our equipment. They have 6 certified playground safety inspectors, so they inspect all of our playgrounds quarterly. The expectation is when they go visit those playgrounds that they correct whatever issues are there on site. And typically, if they can't fix it, it's because it's a part that needs to be ordered. So typically, they're expected to be fixed within 28 hours and 24 hours unless a part needs to be ordered. So that's the process that we use for maintaining the playground equipment. If it's not discovered during that time, a work order just needs to be put in, and they'll respond within 24 hours to fix a specific item. Now that's the maintenance. Regarding how we upgrade our equipment, so we have a plan to upgrade. We get $250,000 annually to upgrade playground equipment. Right now that will cover 2 schools of playground equipment upgrade. So for example, with the $250,000 that we have this year, we're going to be able to upgrade Centerville Elementary and Corporate Landing Elementary, both the 2 through 5 and the 5 through 12 age groups for the equipment. July 1st, we'll get another $250,000 so we can take care of 2 more.
So is that is that covering replacement at that cost, $125,000? Can you share a little bit more?
It's a complete upgrade of the equipment that they have on site.
It is very expensive.
They are.
Very expensive. Please
So
go on.
you can hear by the numbers that I gave you. So that if that's $250,000, that gets us essentially 2 elementary schools per year. It's a very long life cycle to be able to upgrade the equipment.
Have we had the chance yet to assess how many of our schools need this upgrade?
So right now I have 3 phases in here, and then I'm going to make a comment about one of the what they had on their slide. So right now I have 12 elementary schools in front of me that would take us out to the fall of 2023 to do those 12. And part of the next steps that you heard, there was conducting playground equipment evaluation. So that expertise lies with the group that just presented.
Okay. I do have another, but does anybody else want, Mr. Freeman's at the podium. I had another comment or two about other aspects of this.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay. Let me go back to my notes. Weather guidelines, I see. And you know the point was, and I don't know how feasible or not in indoor recesses, but was there some element of discussion at the committee level about that?
There was, and when we looked at some of the guideline documents from other school divisions and how they approach that, we'll continue to do that when we actually develop the committee to write the guidelines document. But there was specific language in pretty much every single school division's implementation guidelines document that we examined that talked about what are the weather conditions that are appropriate and under which conditions would you keep a group of students inside, whether that be below a certain temperature or rain, etc., thunderstorms. Flooding, we do have, some of our schools and the areas around the schools flood, and so that could be a perfectly sunny day, but if we had poor weather, several days prior to that, and the playground or the outside is flooded, that could prompt students to be inside during recess. What was neat about the implementation documents that we saw, there were suggested strategies and activities that teachers can offer. Of course, we want to keep it as unstructured as possible, so we would never, and that's part of the professional learning, we would never encourage teachers to dictate which activities students would do during recess, but that they could offer for students and have the materials available there for both indoor and outdoor recess.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is indoor resource there'll be some discussion about it. Okay, and my final question, we had heard about a 10-minute brain break and other references. I mean, is that just something we're leaving up to the discretion of our teachers ultimately?
So I will tell you that I personally have never been in a classroom, elementary, middle, or high, where teachers are not utilizing brain breaks or time for students to just take 5 or 10 minutes to just depart from the rigor of the classroom and academics. So that has always been at the teacher's discretion and would continue to be at the teacher's discretion.
Thank you.
Mrs. Manning?
I think my colleagues have asked most of my questions, but I just want to reinforce the unstructured play. I think is, from what we're hearing from the recess team, that is one of the most important aspects of everything I think that we've been discussing. So I'd really like to see that definitely emphasized, and as well as not using recess as a punishment. And I would go ahead and like to formally ask Ms. Rive, Policy Chair, if they would go ahead and take up this topic and create some policy suggestions for the full board. Thank you.
And just with that, administration would recommend you look at that inside the wellness policy. Administration would recommend you look at that inside the wellness policy, so we'll bring you something to work with. Thanks.
Right, I just had one question, a couple questions real quick, and then I'll continue.
no.
But you did say that during the time that was sort of opposite their PE time, that will be monitored by the teacher
Correct.
in
So,
grades 1 through 5?
correct, yes, in
All right.
grades 1 through 5. And then in grade full day K would be monitored by the kindergarten teacher assistant, which is how it's currently structured.
Correct, okay, all right. I just wanted to, and there will be training involved in,
Yes.
okay. That's very important aspect of it, so I appreciate that. Ms. Melnick?
Just for the viewing public, 907, I don't know who that is now, but in case they watch this later on, I think it's important to note that Virginia Beach for many, many years has understood the importance of physical education, and that our kids do receive physical education every single day, and we're really lucky that has always been a part of our curriculum.
Thank you.
Right, because there are parts of our state that don't have that.
We are the only school division that offers that we've kind of surveyed, and certainly the only school division in this area, as you saw on that slide, that offers it 5 days a week.
Right. Yeah. Any other comments? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next, our final information item is the interim financial statement.
Good evening.
Welcome. I'm sorry you had to sit through all of this evening, but
That's okay.
well,
It's all good.
we're going to sit intently and listen to everything you have to say.
It's quick and good news, so. Good evening, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. Year-to-date through April, the overall revenue trend remains acceptable as illustrated in this first graph. We have confirmed our actual March 31st ADM is coming in lower than our original budget. However, we are still projecting an approximate $1.9 million in surplus in state revenue. This surplus is mainly composed of the approximate $1.6 million shortfall due to the lower than projected March 31st ADM, but that's offset by a projected surplus of approximately $3.5 million in the supplemental lottery per pupil allocation. The federal revenues continue to show a favorable trend at the end of April, receiving approximately $1.9 million or 116% more than the original budget year to date. And this is mainly due to impact aid receipts and Medicaid reimbursements coming in over budget. The second graph reflects state sales tax revenue that also remains acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. Year to date through April, we're approximately $1.2 million higher than last year. And for May, we will be seeing an increase of approximately $86,000 compared to the May of last year. Our final graph shows our expenditures and encumbrances trend, and this also remains acceptable at this point in the fiscal year. So that concludes the presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions?
Someone needs
Comments?
to ask one since she waited 3 hours.
I was working some. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, do we have any standing committee reports? Mr. Edwards?
Got two. First, the audit committee. Got two reports. The audit committee met recently and received the report on the transportation audit, which actually was mentioned in the workshops this afternoon. That audit report is available online in SharePoint. I encourage my colleagues and the public to review it. The other report I have is on the Achievable Dreams Committee. We met a week ago today and received, and the committee affirmed its recommendation on the secondary facility proposal. And we also worked our way through the memorandum of agreement that exists between the Inachievable Dreams private board that funds the substantial part of the program, and the agreements with Virginia Beach Schools. And we're in large agreement. There's a few details to be worked out between their attorney and our staff and Mrs. Linetti, but we're largely there and expect to have the MOU to the board sometime over the summer for review and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Ms. Melnick?
Just a reminder that the next school board meeting is June 10th, which is a Monday because of graduation week, and the legislative committee will be meeting at 3 o'clock. Right before that meeting, and we'll be preparing starting to prepare our legislative work. We'll be meeting with Mrs. Linetti, Mr. Sutton, and Joel Andrus from Kemper Consulting. And if you have anything in particular that you'd like us to consider, or if you'd like to join us, we'll be in that room right there.
Any other standing committee reports? Mrs. Rye?
So June 5th is turning out to be a busy day on a lot of counts. But there is I serve as the liaison to the School Health Advisory Committee, and it meets quarterly, so the reports are not as frequent as some of these others, but the meeting is Wednesday, June 5th at 9 o'clock. And later that day at 4 o'clock is the final meeting of the Strategic Plan Committee, where at that point the recommendations will come forward for the school board retreat in July.
Thank you. Mrs. Felton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to report on May 22nd. I reported to the Hampton Roads Education Telecommunication Association. We know it's WHRO. And the communication went really well. I'm very interested in one of the programs that they are featuring. It is called Make Your Own Adventure, and it's dealing with the students. So we do have a new media person, Miss Lindsay Horner, who will be getting in contact with us to give us more emphasis on that. But it's basically dealing with students building their own adventure through their eyes, dealing with history. And that's what really had me really response, and they gave us a little example of that as well. Also, I'd like to make mention that Dr. Spence has been elected to the board of the WHRO as one of the committee members as well. I would be remiss that I would not mention this on May 18th. I attended a 200 plus man annual scholarship, and it was awesome. The leadership department showed out. If I started calling names, I probably get mixed up all the, but we had a good turnout of our leadership department. I had the chance to sit at the table with school counselor Terry Calhoun, and Miss Yoder. And it was wonderful. I would mention all of them, and let me just give you one. We had one student from FC. We had several students. We had over, and Dr. Rogers can correct me, we had over 100 students to be assigned to this particular event, and they were all outstanding. And just to mention one, Mr. Christian Manigo had and received a full scholarship to William & Mary. Oh, nice. And that was very impressive. And I could name more, but we don't have a lot of time. We're short on time. Also, on May 23rd, the Adult Learning Center always opened up our graduation, and we attended that as well. And they had 121 students to be registered to graduate, and that within itself was just exciting. It was really great. I enjoyed going there. May 20th, the Technical and Career Education had their first career signing. that was their first, and what it was, the students and the employee came to the event, and they actually signed a contract to begin employment with their students. It was just exciting, and I would just say that it was great. May 16th all the way through May 23rd was exciting for me, and attended those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Felton. Those were all wonderful and exciting events that you attended with us, and we appreciate you giving us a report on those. Anyone else? Okay. At this time, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on non-agenda items? Thank you. Mrs. Melnick, would you please read the motion for us to go into a closed meeting for the discussion of personnel matters?
I make a motion that the school board recess into a closed meeting pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711, part A, paragraph 1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended for personnel matters. Discussion of or consideration of interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1, namely to discuss applicants for citizen advisory committee positions.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mrs. Riggs has made the second. The voting board is open. We will recess for 5 minutes and meet in room 113 for this session. My sister. It's going to take me 15 to fill out.